I call the meeting to order. I will begin by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Our panel members today are, on my far left, Richard Whitbread, Cynthia Stevens, and myself, Chair Robert Buss. Our assessors, Patricia Caldwell and David Penner, and our secretary is Carla Balshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessors make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have opportunity to summarize if they so wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will be repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record.
Please state your name.
Tricia L. Caldwell.
Do you affirm the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, thank you.
And swear. Please state your name.
David Thomas George Penner.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, we will start. First,
Please state your name.
Harrison Dufell.
Do you affirm the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
we will start with 943 Notre Dame Avenue.
Sorry.
Anytime you're ready.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
The roll number is 1306502955500. The address is 943 Notre Dame. This is for roll number 2020. We have an assessed value of $737. There are 4 buildings on the site. One story plus a small office, second floor. The effective year is 1958, and the wall heights are 14 and 15 feet. It is zoned C2 community. The land area is 23,558. The plan area is 9,634 square feet, giving a land to plan area of 2.45. On page 2, you'll see we received requests for information. Last known sale was in 2005. And if you keep going through the brief, to page number 3, you'll see a map of the subject property. It's on Notre Dame between Arlington and, let's see, what is this street? Wall Street. Just north of Notre Dame, on the north side. Page 4, you can see some aerial photographs of the subject. And on page 5, I have some Google Street View photos. page 6 of the brief, we have our cap rate table. So if you go down to the second row section where it says industrial, our lowest cap rates are at 5.5% and our highest cap rates are at 9.8%. But 60% of our cap rates fall within the range of 6.34 and 7.80 for this cycle. And on the next page, on page 7, I have my income workup. As you can see, we have a total leasable area of 10,593 square feet. The overall rent is $6.06. We have vacancy loss at 6%, expenses of 2%, a shortfall rate of $3.75, and an overall cap rate of 7.70, giving us our assessed value of $737,000. However, I do have a recommendation for this property. If I could take you back to page 4. In the pictures, you'll see, the best picture to see this is the bottom aerial photo. There's a section that says 955. It's a little dark brown building at the end, at the west. We had a rate of $6.91 on that, and when I went to inspect the building, it's storage, it's certainly not worth $6.91, so I'd like to lower that to $3.62. And also, I would also like to lower the rate for the main building to $5.08. And everything else remaining the same, vacancy at 6%, shortfall at $3.75, 2% expenses, and a cap rate of 7.70 for a new assessed value of $598,000.
Did you say $5.80 or $5.08?
8 cents.
And $5.98, you said?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I should ask, are you satisfied with that, or like?
Just a quick question. What is the potential rent now with this recommendation?
$497.
Sorry, per annum. 497. Oh, I see. At 10,593. Just 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, sorry, it's $52,599. Okay. I actually printed out these workouts if you want to copy.
No,
Yes.
that's, yeah, the chair, please. We won't be accepting this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on.
Moving on,
Okay, I will go to page 8, where I have my comparable properties. For this property, it's on Notre Dame. It's kind of a more commercial, high-traffic area, so I was looking for comparables in the same market region, similar area, where they have the same kind of exposure. So all of my Comparable properties are also storage warehouse properties, similar vintage, in commercial, high traffic, high exposure areas, with similar wall heights. And I have, the lowest rent is $4.50. And the highest rent is $6.88. So when I printed this brief, it was for my original $6.06 overall rent. My recommendation is to bring it to $4.97. So really, my comparables support the original rent. But, I mean, I do have,
Sorry, can I just interject just quickly? We can accept the, or no, you know what, sorry, I'm thinking too hard. Forget I said anything.
Carry on.
Sorry.
that's all right.
Trying to make it easier, but I'm making it harder. Go ahead, sorry, I'll shut up.
Okay, but still within this range, there are, to support a rent of $4.97, which I think is more appropriate for this building. We have 1200 Sargent Avenue, it's $4.50. We have 666 Ellis, which is $5.19. And we have one at 430 Selkirk for $5.35. And I think that's it. Going through my brief, then the next page is just municipal act excerpts. And then at the back, I have some photographs of the comparable properties. And you'll see, I also have attached the income and expense information that they supply to us. And I asked that the board confirm at a new value of $598,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We'll have questions. Do you have any questions?
Yes,
Mr. Neufeld?
You inspected this, obviously, you were with me.
Yes.
For the owner indicated the tenant was leaving, correct?
Yeah.
Your cap rates, I noticed it at 7.7, it is very close to the 80th percentile, is that fair to say? 7.7 is closer to the 80th?
Yes.
Now, if a prospective buyer were looking at this property with the upcoming vacancy, changes, would it affect the cap rate on the sale, in your professional opinion? If the current upcoming vacancy was known at the time?
Sorry, can you
If
repeat the question?
the upcoming vacancy that is known at the time, would that affect the cap rate to a potential purchaser if this was sold today?
It could.
Okay, thanks, that's great. And so I notice here the 80th percentile is 7.8, and then the high is 9.8. So I've never seen anything in between. If this was higher than 7.8, does that basically mean it jumps all the way up to 9.8 as a cap?
If this is higher than.
Yeah, like your model can either come up with, the highest it would come up for a property like this is likely 7.8. But if you would put it into a different style, the highest it would automatically then jump to 9.8, correct? It wouldn't have there would be nothing in between it.
Yeah, there are.
There are some in between
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I've never
In fact,
seen anything.
in this docket, I have one with the highest 9.8 cap rate.
Right, of course, yes, but there's nothing in between the two, is there?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Like 6.45 or something like that.
No, I'm suggesting that it's either at 7.8 or it jumps all the way up to 9.8. There's nothing in between in your model.
I'm not certain about that.
And I notice you don't have management on your workups, correct?
No, we don't. We took out the management or the 5% fee that was in there before because the market data does not support it.
Okay, and are you aware that 15 years ago and 10 years ago at the municipal board, there was this discussion and an agreement between the assessment department and other agents that this would essentially be treated as normalized non-operating expense costs in order to reflect the non-recoverable expenses that most properties do achieve?
No,
You've never heard that?
I've heard something like that.
Okay, and are you aware that this board has made many decisions that has essentially kept the 5% management and has heard from countless agents that this is a non-recoverable expense and it has decided many times that it should be applied?
I know that the board has ruled both ways in these recent cases, so.
Okay, that's fair. I'll move on for questioning. I do have some just quick rebuttal information regarding that, but I'll just continue with my questions for now, if that's okay. Or sorry, you know what, I guess I'll get into it now. This is Collier's managed.
Have you finished your questions?
If you'd like me to, I can, yes, yeah, sorry.
I think you should finish your questions first.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
And what would you say is the quality and condition of this property?
It's average for its age.
Average for its age?
Yeah.
And that's based on your inspection?
Yes. Minus the part that I lowered. The little storage portion?
This is the 831 you're saying?
Yeah.
But it is lower than you, then you also suggested 508 for the rest of it, correct?
Yes.
And in your experience, properties like this, when they go vacant, do they generally fill out quickly, or do they sit on the market for quite a while?
I guess it depends on marketing.
Depending on marketing, okay. So if you were to market this, let's say Colliers were to market this, do you think that this would be a typical property that would be marketed by a commercial broker
I've seen properties like this.
in this condition and in this state?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then your comparables, 430 Selkirk, I looked at, it wasn't too far off. 318 Logan though, that's in the Exchange District, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Exchange District would have a higher density of multifamily and many more families in the area, so therefore it would be reasonable to assume that rents for miscellaneous retail or smaller industrial like this could be higher.
Actually, this particular property is north of Main Street on the other side. It's not quite the Exchange District. It's actually, I would say it's just outside of the Exchange District actually, and it's also right across from the Silo Mission campus. So it's not actually, it's not a very good area.
Okay, but there is many multifamily developments going in that area, correct?
I would say to the south of that area.
Okay. 771 Main Street, the same thing applies. It's close to downtown, somewhat relatively high density in multifamily, correct?
No, 771 Main Street is north of Disraeli.
Correct.
It is also north of, is it the underpass? Yeah. It's past Higgins,
Correct, yep.
yeah.
But on it's still on Main Street, somewhat close to downtown, correct?
It's certainly not in the downtown area.
Okay. 1574, who was the tenant there? 1574 Aaron, sorry, your second last comment.
For confidential reasons, we're not allowed to say.
Okay. I will address it in my presentation then. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Yeah. I'm looking at your photos on page 5 and page 4. This gray portion of the building with windows, is that office, is it living, what is that? It looks newer.
This front portion, that is office area.
It is office
Yeah,
area?
there's the main floor office and second floor office.
Okay, and you've assessed the same rent
Yeah.
to that area as to the industrial portion? Okay, and so there seems to be a little storefront area here. I thought that was the office. That is not the office then.
No,
See
that was, there were, currently, there's only one tenant. Originally, or not originally, but in the past, there have been more than one tenant, so that was an entrance
Okay,
for another tenant.
for a different tenant
Yes.
perhaps,
Yeah,
but now it's all one contiguous space for this
yes,
tenant.
yeah.
Okay, who is about to depart?
Pardon?
Who is about to depart, if I heard you right?
Yes.
Okay. No, that's it. No other questions.
So the, this is an oddly configured building. So there's offices in this dark gray area or dark blue, whatever the color that is.
Yes.
And so the remainder of the building is being used for what?
It's light manufacturing. They, what do you call them, decals or patches? They
Yeah,
for,
So it's not storage, they're actually
yeah, it's like sewing, and
Yeah.
they're putting decals on like sportswear and
Okay, so there's
jerseys
some
and
storage,
stuff like
yeah,
that.
okay, some storage and some actual,
Yeah.
okay. Would you normally assess office space at the same square footage price as that kind of a space?
It depends on the quality of the office space. If it were higher quality, then I might put a higher rent on it, but it's not, it's just basic office space.
So you've actually assessed it lower than you normally would, based on your inspection?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I have, thank you.
Are the uses for the comparables relatively similar to the subject property? We'll call it light manufacturing? Nothing?
I would say 71 Main Street is. 1574 Erin, I'm not sure, to be honest, what they do. 430 Selkirk is comparable. Uh, 1200 Sargent as well.
Okay. That's all my questions. Perhaps you want to present your rebuttal evidence now?
Sure, and just a follow-up question, I know we didn't go upstairs, but it's not office, is it? It's being used as storage?
The upstairs is actually used as showroom.
A showroom, and that's based on, where did you get that information?
From our last year's notes.
Notes. But when we went there, they had,
Yeah, you could see the window and they had racks of clothing.
it just appeared as storage to me, that's all.
To me, it appeared as racks of clothing on a clothing rack.
Did that business really seem as though they had a showroom that people would come into?
Well, if you look back in the note, when I look back in the notes, it was used as a showroom.
Okay. But could you say for sure that it's definitely being used as showroom now? I personally think it's storage, that's what I saw when I was there, so, but.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, okay, sorry.
Okay, so your rebuttal evidence.
Yeah, sorry. So the rebuttal evidence is Collier's management expense study. Basically what happened, same Altus, Stevenson, Mark Newman, Colliers got together when this 5% vacancy was in question, and we had discussed how in the past it was a concept that we had that was between an agents and assessment department to be understood as a non-recoverable expenses. When you see an expense statement, and unfortunately we don't really have many today because these are not investment grade buildings, at the bottom they'll always have non-recoverable expenses. Those can be some things such as leasing costs, bank charges, tenant improvements, code upgrades, things that they just can't recover from tenants. That is, it's common in every investment grade building, and in what my rebuttal evidence is showing, that of course they're not named, but is the non-recoverable expenses compared to the revenue, the percentage of how much is non-recoverable, and how much, whether or not there's this asset management, and then the total. And at the very back, we see that it does range from a median of 9.4, mean of 12.8, and a low of 2.5, as high as 5.8, or 58.8. 2.5 is an anomaly, and for 58.8 they are, of course, but you can see that the trend line does show just above 5% as non-recoverable expenses for investment grade quality buildings. Now, this is commonly misunderstood as property management. It has been our contention that it is either asset management or a recovery for non-recoverable expenses since 10 or 15 years ago, before my time and before this became an issue. So there are many decisions on this as well that I won't bother bringing up, but there have been, the assessor was right, some decisions have denied these first in some respect, but a lot of decisions have been favorable to the appellate's NOIs, which has included these 5% management expenses. And that's all about the rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions on his rebuttal?
Sorry, I was just trying to go over this while you were talking.
Yeah.
Can you name some of the costs that you referred to as
Like types of costs?
non-recoverable?
Yeah, I mean, code upgrades is a common one. Code changes all the time. You can't really recover it from tenants without the leases allowing you for it. Some tenant improvements, but there's not much for tenant improvements in here. Asset management, which is huge. If a property is running out of Calgary, has an asset manager that deals with all their assets, and then property managers locally, those are two different line items on the statement completely, and asset management is not recovered, and that is someone's time that is not recovered. And as well as leasing fees. Every time a building is vacant, you need to pay, you generally need to pay agent to fill it up for you, and that costs a lot of money, and you're not recovering that from your tenant.
I also have some rebuttal evidence.
Okay, we'll finish with the questions
Okay.
first on his, and then we'll have a look at yours. Any
I'm
questions
fine,
on the
thank you.
rebuttal?
This is the first time I've seen this particular document, so
Okay.
I've seen others on this
Oh,
topic,
great.
but I've seen this one. So can you so these are all individual properties you've listed? They're
Correct.
listed
This
here,
is-
so 86 individual properties?
Correct.
Okay, and what kinds of properties are these?
Managed properties, so strip malls, offices, and
Okay.
industrial managed
Okay,
properties.
okay. Okay, and the date, okay, so so December 18 that I'm looking at there, that means that this amount was pulled in December of
That's the
2018?
statement date, yeah. So,
Okay,
yeah,
all
so
right,
it would-
okay.
generally we try to do December because you get a full year, but if there's some that are a little different, it's just because the statements are written a little differently. Most statements are written from January to December, but you
Okay.
see one's July, so that's likely July to July.
Okay. Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, on the assessor's, in the assessor's brief on page 14, she's included the annual expenses. property management and administration, they have 17,125.
Yes.
Is that what you're referring to here as?
No, that would
management?
be actual property management, that would not be this non-recoverable expense. I we'll get to it in my presentation, but I've revised, based on that statement you have just indicated, I've stabilized that management.
Okay,
So, but no, that is property,
that's different thing,
Yeah.
okay. So a few of them have asset management on top of the non-recoverable expense. Why do just a few of them have it and the rest don't?
Generally, asset management is, security exchange companies, larger REITs, someone like, for example, say Artis REIT would have their asset management fee, and then have their local property managers that are doing the actual property management for it. So they're dealing with the investment portfolio, and that's what we're dealing with when we're trying to get the investment value in something that is fair in the open market. And so when you're buying an investment grade property, you do look at those non-recoverable expenses. Something with high non-recoverable expenses, such as something that has a high turnover rate, has constant leasing fees, constantly, that is something you would consider when you're purchasing a building. And there has to be an allotment for that.
But can the value of the building change depending on what type of management you have? I mean, we're looking for the market value of a building, and
So you're saying because this would be something likely more owner occupied or owned more locally?
well, I'm thinking of market value, and I'm thinking, is the market value dependent on who owns it? Or is the market value dependent on?
No, because you have to do it in an open market and value it as an investor would. And that's how we do it. That's how we like to do it best at Colliers, because that's how, when you're selling these buildings, what a cap rate is generating is an investor grade building. So when you use investor grade cap rates, you need to think like an investor and map it and do it like an investor would. There would not be an asset management fee in many of these buildings, of course, because they are smaller scale and you don't require that. But when we're looking at an investment style, right, yes. And so of your argument, or your point is that maybe higher grade building would have more asset management, correct? But we have to look at it as though you have unlimited means to purchase this building as it's closest to market value.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. If you would like to present, the assessor would like to present some rebuttal evidence?
Yes.
I would be glad to accept.
Oh, wait, this was.
Okay.
I won't project it.
Thank you.
Rob, can I ask for a 2-minute recess for the three of us to step out? Conversation for a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will take a short recess. Three of the panel members will step out. And we will deal with your rebuttal evidence.
Okay. I would like to go through all the pages, if I, just so that I don't miss anything, if that's
Okay.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay. To develop the 2020 general reassessment model, assessment and taxation analyzed income and expense information where management was recovered, to derive model generated NOI income, net of management expenses. Therefore, the model generated NOIs developed through a fee simple interest valuation are already net of management fees. So all the rents that are in here are just bare rents. ATD has also allowed for non-recoverable expenses. Non-recoverable expenses include a general 2% expense allowance, shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expenses during times of vacancy. The 2% general allowance was always intended to include expenses incurred by the landlord that are not recovered by tenants. Those expenses could include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc. Previous jargon at the Boardroom revision may have referred to the 2% general expense allowance as a structural repair allowance. This jargon was oversimplified. For management adjustments, below are 2 municipal board orders that support the position that the historic 5% management expense was an expense relating to the standard management fees charged by the owner or property manager relating to the day-to-day operation of the property. File number 02A10377 and 02A10418. On page 4, management expenses. Mr. Ferguson advised the board that all costs related to management were being fully recovered from the tenant, and therefore there should be no deduction allowed for management expense in this case. In the instant case, therefore, since there is clearly a full recovery under the terms of the lease, there will be no deduction permitted for this expense. This is just going to prove that, because we've heard arguments that the 5% was supposed to be for other things, when we're saying it wasn't. It was for management expense. Relevant facts, expenses relating to the management of the building were being fully recovered by the owner under the terms of the lease. No deduction for management expenses was permitted. And another file number 01A10892, order number A0505017. Pages 4 and 5, management expense. Mr. Ferguson advised the board that all costs related to management were being fully recovered from the tenant, and therefore there should be no deduction allowed for management expense in this case. The board is prepared to accept a management expense when it is clear that management related costs have either not been recovered at all or only partially recovered. In the instant case, there was some evidence before the board that 2 of the larger tenants, Manitoba Government and Sand Store, occupying approximately 1/3 of the leasable area, paid no management fees. The board does not have evidence as to the precise amount that was not collected. In the circumstances, the board is prepared to set the amount of deduction at 3%. And the relevant facts of this case are expenses relating to the management of the building were not being fully recovered by the owner under the terms of the lease. A deduction of 3% for management expenses was permitted, as these costs were only partially recovered by the owner. Now, the next is a section on non-recoverable expenses, which is what Mr. Neufeld was alluding to. An example of non-recoverable expenses: leasing commissions, tenant inducements, tenant improvement allowance, free rent. The inclusion of these non-recoverable expenses is contrary to the municipal board case law. There is a long-standing history of municipal board orders stating that these items should not be treated as expenses. Below are 3 municipal board orders indicating this. File numbers 97A1076, order number A97280, pages 3 and 4. This question has been dealt with by the board in several recent orders, in particular in the municipal board order number A94196 dealing with the Richardson building, where it was indicated considerable evidence was heard concerning the effective value of tenant inducements. The respondent ultimately abandoned the position that value should be reduced to reflect tenant inducements. And municipal board order number A97065, the board is satisfied that it is not proper to reduce value to reflect tenant inducements. The board reiterates that tenant improvements, leasing commissions, and leasing incentives are not expenses which may be used to reduce income for the purpose of calculating market value. Relevant facts, tenant improvements, leasing commission, and leasing incentives are not expenses which may be used to reduce income for the purposes of calculating market value. Shall I continue? There are 2 more examples saying exactly this.
Okay, no, we'll look at this ourselves then.
Okay. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to get to, on page 4 is about asset management fees.
Okay.
The agent, I'm gonna say for the first part. In real estate, an asset manager's job is to maximize returns for their investors' portfolios of properties, typically for corporations or real estate investment trusts, REITs, that have multiple real estate holdings. The Institute of Real Estate Management, IREM, has established a common core list of functions for asset managers. IREM states that asset managers are those who reside in a different, ordinarily understood to be a higher place in the control of principle of real estate. Establish capital stack, determine investment strategy, owning strategy, and return hurdles. Establish and manage how return and key asset control principles will be addressed. Determine leverage, determine and manage the structure of ownership. Allocate resources among portfolio for capital improvements and other major expenditures. Define the holding period, test the holding period hypothesis. Manage the mission and identify of the portfolio in order to stabilize congruity and avert adverse actions. Understand and test components and asset life cycles. Establish where in the life cycle assets will be acquired and to what standard assets will be improved and maintained. Make determinations as to acquisition and disposition timing, portfolio effect, and outlier identification and solution. As depicted above, asset management is an arm of business and investment decision for corporations. Asset management has nothing to do with the direct day-to-day operation of an individual property. Therefore, asset management expenses are not allowable operating expense item when valuing commercial properties.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do, just a few. Where's your information from on this asset management, last page?
It's taken from, as you can see, at the bottom, page 4.
But your footnote ends at the second paragraph there, so these bullet points are not from that, that's your own information, is it not?
I did not write this, so.
Okay, so Cushman Wakefield wrote the second paragraph and then the assessment department wrote the rest, then, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. You say, or you indicate that there was a decision on this, but then they gave it a 3% management, is that correct?
In that case, yeah.
Okay. And are you aware that 2% is a structural reserve? And that is a common appraisal method that you always apply a 2% structural reserve?
Previous jargon at the Board of Revision may have referred to the 2% general expense allowance as structural repair allowance. This jargon was oversimplified.
Okay, that's what, I read that, you read that, but what does that mean? I mean, it's a 2% structural reserve, that's standard, you don't remove that, that's an appraisal.
You're saying it's a 2% structural reserve. I'm saying it's for non-recoverable operating costs.
But where do you show evidence that this isn't a structural reserve? You just said this is just an opinion that it is an operating cost.
Expenses could include advertising, promotion, professional fees, structural repairs, etc. That's the 2%.
Okay. on your second municipal board order here, it does say that the board, I'll read it. The board reiterates that tenant improvements, leasing commissions, leasing incentives are not expenses that are used to reduce income. What do they mean by income? What line would that be in our income, in our workup? That would be the top line here, before all the deductions, correct? Where you make, so you don't use expenses to come to, you don't use those expenses to come to this number. And that's what it's indicating, is it not? Can you explain how it isn't? Mr. Penner, I don't see where it says NOI anywhere here.
Income is income.
Well, income is potential income, as far as I'm concerned.
In this case, we're talking about the development of the net income and what expenses are deductible.
And
Those
then
expenses have been ruled as not deductible
not deductible on an
in
analysis.
in reaching the net operating income, which is used for assessment purposes. The board has ruled that those are not allowable expenses.
Expenses for the, okay. Sorry, he's gonna whisper something to me, I was just waiting for it.
This is in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Did you want to be sworn in, Rocky?
I'm not,
No, he can whisper to me, it's fine. This is, yeah, it's just, what they're getting at is that this is the net income, you don't deduct expenses from, you still have to make it along. Sorry, this is the first time we've seen this, so. I don't,
if we had been a bit more made. Well, what stage are we at here?
The accessory presented rebuttal for the first property.
And you're asking?
Yeah.
Please state your name.
Rocky Newfield.
Do you affirm the evidence you present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions?
Do you mind if we have 2 minutes just to discuss this?
Okay,
This
we'll-
is kind of new for us.
Yep.
If we can get through this.
That's
It'll
fine,
speed
we'll have
along.
we'll have a short recess.
Chairman?
I call the meeting back to order, and we are dealing with questions on the assessor's rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chairman, I may cover some ground already asked, but I apologize in advance if that happens. We weren't aware that this was going to be brought forward.
Okay, well,
Thank you, and this was presented by Mr. Penner?
by the assessor. Sorry, I
Pardon me?
forget your name.
Ms. Caldwell,
Ms.
you
Caldwell.
presented this? Okay. So who am I directing questions to?
Well, I believe either one can answer the questions.
Okay. Just some basic groundwork here. How many investment properties have you or the city of Winnipeg sold or purchased? 0?
No idea,
Okay, none probably.
quite possibly.
You don't know of any, do you?
No,
Okay, thank you. How many investment properties has the city of Winnipeg or yourselves appraised, not assessed, appraised?
I can't say.
None that you're aware of?
If it's happened, I am not aware of it.
Okay. But the assessment department is not in the business of going to the investment markets and purchasing buildings, selling buildings, evaluating them for finance purposes. That's not their business, is it?
No.
They're in the business of setting assessments. And you follow the Municipal Assessment Act,
Yeah,
which declares that market value is the determinant of value, is that correct? You use market value?
yes,
And does the assessment department define market value, or do they accept a broader definition of market value?
Can you say that again?
Does the assessment department create their own definition of market value? They don't, do they? They rely on the common known definition of market value, the one that the industry uses, correct?
Yes.
Now, this argument on non-recoverable expenses goes into a variety of avenues, including municipal board orders and comments on jurisdictional exception and valuation practices. Is there like a sole authority that you're turning to for determination? Or is it as we read here? Is there a Bible? Where's this all coming from? Where's your relevant theoretical base for it then?
Well, we have municipal board orders supporting this.
So it's a collection of case law and as stated here. Now, this one that you brought up, the first one on page 1, relating to file number 02A10377. Just to clarify for the record, this Mr. Ferguson that you're referring to, that is Mr. Brett Ferguson? Are you aware of that?
No.
Were you aware that he was working for the city of Winnipeg at the time in a contract position?
No.
Were you aware that at the time he was working at Stevenson Advisors?
No.
Were you aware at the time that I was also working at Stevenson Advisors?
No.
So you're familiar with the details and facts behind this case?
I know what the board order decided, what the board
But you
decided.
weren't a first-hand participant, you or Mr. Penn are not first-hand participants in
No.
this case? Do you know what the argument was all about?
I don't know the exact details of it.
Okay. Now, ultimately, at the end of this order, and continue on in the future after this order was written, do you recall what happened at the assessment department and in general practice of management fees?
No, I didn't.
Don't you recall, oh, I know you weren't there, but you can't recall, were you not aware that after this order came out, that there was a general agreement between all parties that a flat management fee was going to be applied regardless of any recovery for property management? Were you aware of that fact?
No, I wasn't. Do you have evidence of that?
I think the evidence is in the 2004 assessment, the 2000, am I getting my dates wrong here? We were still in a 4-year cycle back then. Maybe Mr. Buss is gonna correct me. The next general reassessment was?
Well, regardless, you're asking the questions, so
Okay,
we won't be accepting questions from the assessor.
My answer is yes. The evidence is in every general assessment parameter that has been published after this has accepted a 5% management fee on all properties done on the income approach.
I think what you're saying is, have we traditionally allowed the 5%? Yes, we've allowed the 5% in our income valuation of these properties up until this cycle.
Right.
Where the market evidence became apparent that this was a fully recovered expense, therefore the department made the decision to no longer allow it.
Okay, then my question is, are you certain that you are correct in you saying that you traditionally have allowed? I'm objecting to the words traditionally allowed. Were you not aware that that was a consensus agreement?
I'm not aware of the nature of it, just that it was, since I started with the department, an expense that was allowed, 5% management expense, which was deemed to cover the cost of managing the property. The evidence in more recent times has shown the department that that's a recovered expense, and deducting it from the already net rent. Net of that expense would be double counting that expense. And the department has changed our practice going forward and is no longer allowing the 5% based on market evidence.
Okay, well, I think what I'm trying to do is break this down a little bit better in terms of being a general allowance and a specific. Now, on the page 2, there's a discussion here about tenant inducements. Now, in the presentations that you've seen from us, did we mention tenant inducements?
I believe,
You had the
Ayrton.
opportunity to cross-examine us on our source material?
Ayrton gave examples of tenant inducement, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry, I did the study, so, and I apologize that we weren't prepared for this. We didn't include tenant inducements. No, we didn't do improvements either. No, we did is repairs on turnover, which is different than improvements. So again, I guess if we had been prepared for this, we would have presented a bit differently. My apologies to everybody. So in our calculation from the files of Collier's property management, were you aware that we did not include inducements?
No?
And we did not include, we did not include leasing incentives.
Okay.
Were you aware that we did not include anything for free rent?
To be honest, we don't know exactly what you included because there's just numbers, so we can't.
Correct, and that's a fair answer. And I suppose we should have, this is a work in progress. We were focused on getting reviewing our files and getting the numbers out. On page 3, there's a comment at the bottom about jurisdictional exception to QSPAP. Why is this comment being made? Was this written by an appraiser? Last paragraph, on page 3.
Canadian uniform standards is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's a comment about jurisdictional exception.
What is your question about that?
I'm just wondering, why is this in here? Are you suggesting that the assessment department has to comply with QSPAP?
I'm not suggesting anything.
Well, why is it in here? Because I think this is something an appraiser might write.
This is part of departmental research, so I'm not sure why it's not.
Okay, but the department can't claim jurisdictional exception because if you're not an accredited appraiser complying with QSPAP. It's kind of an interesting point. I don't understand how this forms part of our argument. It's rather confusing, misleading, and totally out of place. So I'm wondering where it came from.
Departmental research, we're not sure.
Okay, well, what I would like to ask is, are you suggesting from this that in any way that the relevant case law and decisions made at all levels of boards hearing property assessment appeals are creating their own valuation standards and disregarding the Municipal Assessment Act that says you have to apply market value?
I don't understand your question.
Well, this section here talks about that the board has consistently ordered that items of assessed value don't include commissions, improvements, free rents. It talks about extensive case law, and then it talks about jurisdictional exception.
The document is provided to illustrate how and why we came to the decision to not allow the 5% management fee.
But in which tribunal have you ever seen the judge or the board say we're not going to apply market value?
Mr. Chairman, relevance of the question? I'm not sure where this is going.
Maybe you could restate the question a little bit more definite.
Well, okay, these statements on page 3 are rather,
Okay, I think you've gone through that already,
inappropriate.
so.
So my question is here, when somebody brings before a board case law and says case law is this, case law is that,
Yeah.
has there ever been a case law that has said that we will not follow market value?
I suspect not, but maybe you could answer that. I
When-
suspect there's
when-
never been one that said we will not follow market value.
That's my question, has a
Okay.
judge or a board ever said we're not following market value? Other than Mr. Diamond the other day, who one
Perhaps.
had to be there.
Could you answer that question?
I
Mr.
can
Head?
assure you that the department, the department's mandate is to determine fair market value on every property that it assesses.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, perfect. Page 4, it says that Altus Group incorrectly incorporates asset management. Now, who says it's incorrect? Is this an opinion, or is this a theoretical base on it?
The document was prepared in response to Altus's position on it, which is similar to yours, I believe. And they were arguing that the 5% management fee should be included, while we took the opposite argument, and we believe that their research was flawed. In this case, we're addressing Colliers and yourself, but we found some flaws with Altus research.
Altus, so this has nothing to do with the Collier's report.
Well, it has everything to do with Collier's position, that 5% should be allowed as a deduction. And we're saying market evidence indicates that it's a fully recovered expense, and it shouldn't be.
So let's get back to point number 1. In what sale or appraisal of a property have you ever seen a fee not deducted from management?
Well, what we see is management fees, management expenses incurred and recovered. That's the whole gist of this document. And because we're seeing management fees, management expenses recovered, then it's already net in the rent, and to deduct it a second time would be double dipping.
How do you know it's net in the rent?
We've done our research. We have mailers from every property,
Mailers.
every submission.
But no sales. You've never sold a property, you never appraised a property, you look at the mailer.
But we get mailers from every property that we request.
Okay, now in the mailer, it's line items, right?
Yes.
And there are specific things that are asked for in the line items, right? So how do you know you've asked for everything?
This is based on our research, Mr. Neufeld. And I respect that you disagree with the position, but we've done our research, the department has done extensive research. That's the reason it's gone, to reflect market value.
Where is this research? Have you presented it?
It's in the department.
No, but has it ever been presented to the board? You've seen Collier's brought forward some issues. I know Altus has a document. I'm aware that Stevenson Management will be coming out with, or has produced one. And Mr. Mark Newman has presented or will present evidence on this. They've shown you their research, have they not?
We've seen research or a document from Altus, but it was proved to be.
We've seen
not
the
correct.
Altus's study, because they were first up in the cycle.
They've given it to
And
you
we've
for review.
analyzed the properties in there and done an in-depth rebuttal to that, which we believe validates our position. So we'll leave it up to the panel
No,
to
but-
decide on this issue today.
So my question here is, given that the burden of proof is on the assessment department, where's your research?
why can't we review it?
The research is, when the modelers create the model, everything they're getting, the information they're getting, it's not supported, that 5% is not supported.
Have you proven it, shown it to anyone?
Proven what?
Have you shown it to anyone that it's not supported? You accept it, you're saying we should accept it on faith?
Well, the studies and the documents are in the office. They're not
Yes, I
here-
think-
They're not here before you today.
Are
I think
they
it's
available?
up to your, to request that from the assessment department if you want it, and then see what their answer
One
is.
step
No, you hold it.
further.
They don't have it, so if you want to request it from them, you can, but it's our job here to
Alright.
make a decision. Now, they've given you their information, and
Well, Mr. Chairperson, I know you're quite aware of the practices of the assessment department in this case on their release of what data they give out and don't give out. And I suppose I
can't say that I'm aware of that, but anyway, go
You
ahead.
were aware of it. But my question would be, has the assessment department ever released their modeling on any subject whatsoever for review?
Well, we develop our values based on our models, and our models are proven to meet standards. And it's based on market research, so we don't make up.
Has it ever been released?
What
Any-
what
any-
exactly
any part of the
are you
model?
referring to that's been released?
Any of the data
The
that went
inner
in?
workings of the model?
No, any of the data that went into the modeling, any of the parameters, every time we have a hearing, someone asks, well, where's your cutoff date for this or that? And they said, well, they'll check their notes and said, oh yeah, well, it might be this date, 1952, before it is less, after it is more. And the public doesn't know that. Now, the government of Saskatchewan forces them to put it on their website.
Okay, they don't have the information from the model, so there's no sense
Right.
going down that road. They don't have it with them. Now, if you want to request them to bring it, that's a whole different thing that you can go through.
No, I understand.
They don't have it with them.
Well, I guess what I have here is argument rather than
Yeah.
data.
Yeah,
Thank you. Are we allowed to make a statement on this fact matter?
you'll have a chance to summarize.
Okay.
How's that?
All right.
If you have no more questions, we'll see if the panel has questions on the rebuttal from the assessment department. None?
My question was somewhat what we just went through, so I won't belabor it, but it is, like, I feel if you're going to keep referring, if we're going to be trying to make a decision on this item and you're going to be referring to market evidence that we don't have in front of us, it makes it difficult for us to get there. That's me personally, because you're mentioning market evidence, but you don't have any. The other point that or the other question I have on, not a point, but a question I have on some of the board orders, it appears, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it appears that some of these board orders are saying that, are looking at these items individually. Is that correct? Like one where they changed it to 3%?
Right, in that case, they found
Yeah.
management was
So-
partially recovered and allowed 3%.
Yeah, so I guess when you take all the 5% out for everyone without any market evidence to show it, it makes it, does that make it more difficult, do you think, to figure out where we should be going with this?
Well,
Well, the board orders have been individualized.
What would give clarity to the board on this matter? An example of a few properties that show the management fee is recovered?
I don't know, when you're referring to market evidence, like what you have here in your rebuttal does not have any market evidence. So yet, I suppose maybe, yeah.
I'm not even sure how we would do that unless we were to take a sampling and.
Well, I'm not
break it
asking you to
down.
provide a report, I'm just asking the question, because you're expecting us to make a pretty big decision on a fairly major item here, which is why it's been taking time in front of the board without, and you mention evidence, I've heard it both times I've heard this argument, and yet
Okay, well, we had brought this, as cap rate evidence, actual sales that we have collected, which do include an example of the non-recoverable expenses. And so I can hand these out. Perhaps this will help.
What is this again? This is,
Well, the chairperson was requesting further evidence on the management expense and non-recoverable
well, my question
expenses.
really
And-
was that it's difficult for us to make, can you see that it's difficult for us to make this decision when you keep referring to evidence that we haven't seen?
Sure. Well, in this document, we do have a sampling of 9 properties where we looked to see what the expenses were and what was recovered. Perhaps that will shed some light for the board.
It's up to you whether you think we should.
it's your question, but will it satisfy your question?
I have, not seeing it, I don't know.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
Without seeing it.
Okay, yes, the question is, how did you come up with this? So if the, this is evidence on.
Okay, so this is an addenda to our presentation, which provides further support for our cap rate, shown on page 1. For industrial, it's the 4 at the bottom. This is sampling of 4 sales, which aren't necessarily to be relied on in the instant case, but just show a sampling of some cap rates and that our model fits in with that. And then on page 2 is an example of non-recoverable expense sampling. And I'll read through that for you right now. For the 2020 general assessment, the City of Winnipeg Assessment Taxation Department analyzed income and expense information reported by property owners to derive model-generated estimates of net operating incomes, or NOIs. Deriving these NOIs, ATD is allowed for non-recoverable expenses in 2 categories: a general 2% non-recoverable expense allowance and a shortfall allowance per square foot to account for non-recoverable expense associated with the vacant spaces. The following table provides a sample of properties for which actual income and expense data was submitted to ATD for the period preceding the reference date. Using this data, stabilized effective gross incomes and non-recoverable expense totals were calculated. The non-recoverable expenses are shown as a percentage of the effective gross incomes. This analysis is evidence that the 2% non-recoverable expense allowance included in the model-generated NOIs is consistent with market data. The purpose for showing these individual expense rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the 2% non-recoverable expense allowance used in ATD's mass appraisal models. They are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property that we're hearing today. So we have a sampling of 9 properties and the non-recoverable expense as a percentage of the EGI, and you can see the range there. I won't go through each individual one, but the median is 1.12%. We're allowing 2% for this. It's not anywhere near 5 or 7%, which it would be if we allowed the additional 5%. So this is additional data which substantiates our position and shows that it was correct for the department not to allow the management expense.
So were these, these were derived using the items listed on your income and expense form, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay,
Okay,
that's it, thanks.
now, it's my turn to ask questions on the assessor's rebuttal evidence. But I think all the questions have been asked, so I have no questions on it. Now, we would accept questions on this information that has just been presented.
No. Questions on any part of it?
It's been presented as evidence, so
Page
try to
one.
keep the questions relevant to.
I understand. Page one, where did the income information come from?
Income and expense mailers.
Okay, and so they weren't generated for the sale?
For these sales?
Yeah. But when the people got together and made the decision to sell to each other, they didn't give them their income and expense mailer to base it on, did they?
I'm sure that any purchaser would request income and expense information.
That's correct, but not your city mailer, would they?
They wouldn't ask us for it, no.
So you don't know if they relied on that information to make their purchase decision, do you?
I don't know what information they relied on. What we've done is shown what the incomes were for these properties which sold, compared the incomes to the sale price to determine the cap rate.
Well, that's a very interesting answer. You don't know what they relied on. You are aware that anyone who's performing valuation and they want to do a cap rate should know what they relied on for the sale, don't you?
Well, I would guess that they relied on income information, same
But specifically what
information that we have.
information?
Pardon me?
Specifically what information? You know that they relied on?
Income and expense information. Any purchaser would want to know on an income producing property what the income and expense is.
Well, I'm looking at several of these, and in our office, as we know, we have the records of what was relied on at point of sale, and it wasn't the mailer.
I'm not
So-
saying it was the mailer.
So-
I'm sure they looked at the income information.
Well, how does this relate to market value then?
Properties are bought and sold based on their income producing capability and valued that way for the most part. That's why we use an income approach.
Were any interviews conducted with purchasers or sellers?
Often we request a sales mailer when these are done and get pertinent details of the sale.
First one, 294 Portage. Were you aware what the conditions upon which it was sold?
I don't have that information here.
You were not aware of the leasing package upon which the sale was based?
I'm not aware of any details of that particular sale, no.
Mr. Neufeld, are you trying to dispute the cap rates here, or what are we, because we're not really,
It was brought up, and this is, I mean.
he's submitted some information if you checked on each cap rate.
Well, the point is that we're familiar with some of these, and we know, for example, the first one was based on a sale lease package that was, was coming up prior to sale. It wasn't based on the mailer. So it's nonsense that they're bringing it in here. It's misleading, it's incorrect, it's inappropriate. And since the first time we saw it, by the time we get to the next time, we're gonna have a lot more information for you. Page 2, you have 9 properties listed here. Was all this information also taken from the mailer?
As far as I know.
Were the actual financial statements reviewed?
When financial statements are provided, we do use them, yes.
Does every single line item in the mailer correspond to a financial statement?
No, not necessarily.
So in many cases, there will be line items in the statements that have no place to put on the mailer, is that not correct?
That's correct.
And in the review of these, were any of these Manitoba government tenants by any chance?
I'm not aware of that.
You have more than 9 in your study?
I don't know, this is what we were given
Handout.
to bring as a sample. I'm not sure.
It's about 20,000 commercial properties in Winnipeg, right?
I believe these particular addresses were in Altus's study. So we looked at those
Okay.
and determined the non-recoverable expenses.
So this is a response to the Alta study, and this is.
True, but it provides us of a sampling
Right.
to show that we're correct in our position.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Whitworth, do you have any questions on this?
Nope, I have nothing more.
I have no questions either. If, Mr. Newfelds, if you would like to make summation on this issue is, thank you, is this issue of the non-recoverable expenses, perhaps we could do that now, and the assessment department will do it as well, and then
Okay.
you could be,
Sure.
I'm sure
Sure.
you
Who
want to
goes
be
first?
excused. The assessment department will go first. If you have summation, if you want to make a summation of what's gone on here in the last half an hour, if not, you don't have to, but
That's it.
No, we're just drawing attention again to the fact that an expense that has traditionally been allowed is not been allowed. We base that on market evidence. We don't just make up things like that because we want to change things up, throw curveballs. Market evidence shows that. We've provided a sampling of 9 properties that shows that. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. So we understand that it's a point of contention, something that the agents and property owners have grown used to, and it perhaps continued on even while that expense was being recovered. So it's a major change, but it's well supported by market evidence, and we believe going forward that that's the proper way to do our evaluations.
okay, thank you.
This issue has risen 2 times in my memory, and I date myself back to about 1996 in the tax appeal cycle. Maybe some people here have been around longer than that and have longer memories. But it's come up twice before, it's been an issue in the past, and it's been resolved to the point of following the practice of normal market practice. The assessment department can't invent their own valuation procedures as an argument. I've been in this business since then, and since 2003, I've been at one of Winnipeg's major commercial real estate brokers, first at Stevenson and then at Collier's. We handled the bulk of the commercial transactions in the city. We do appraisals. I'm a member of the Appraisal Institute, I'm an accredited appraiser. I was taught from the beginning, when I got my designation, when you're doing income approach, you put in the net rent, you subtract for vacancy, you subtract for shortfall, you subtract for management, and then you would deal with a replacement reserve. Now, and then you have your NOI. And those are standardized. There's not a special rules. We always have to do this. The amounts can vary. For example, in appraising the value of bare land, vacant land on an income approach, the replacement reserve is not going to be very high because there's nothing to consider. But if you have a building that's older and has roof issues, you're gonna have to go higher. And now the city has standardized that in the other at 2%. That's what it's there for. We've all accepted it. The management side is, it varies. You've seen our report. These aren't made-up properties. These are, we set out one day to find every single statement, financial statement, not income and expense form, financial statement we can lay our hands on, and this is what we came up with. We put the dates, we put the amounts, we put the non-recoverables. Non-recoverables are a variety of different things. For example, the Manitoba government does not pay for certain things in recovery of common area. They don't pay for elevators. I don't know why, but they won't pay for elevators. So that's a non-recoverable. And there are other leases that are drawn up that way, that even though they express a net amount, they don't pay for it. The most common one is going to be HVAC, because it's always a dispute when the air conditioner blows. They'll say, well, the lease says it's your fault, and then the owner, then the tenant says, well, it's your fault. So someone has to pay for it, and it's a non-recoverable. And non-recoverables, yes, leasing commissions are not recovered. Tenant improvements, that goes in a different category altogether. But repairs to a vacant suite are non-recoverable, and they're not inducements. If you have a commercial unit that goes vacant, you're going to have to do a code upgrade for the next tenant. That's not an inducement, and that's not an advantage. That's just a fact of life. A new occupancy permit derives a new code review. That's mean HVAC, barrier-free, the big ones, in all the units. These are not recovered. And these expenses that we have in relate to issues like that and others. Every building has its own peculiarities. And the leases will determine what can and can't be recovered from tenants. And if someone's going to bring you a study like this, you know what you need with this study? You need the financial statements, and you need every single lease. Now, in our case, we had the financial statements and we had access to all the leases, and there were a couple of ones where we went back and reread the leases and double-checked if what was the case, why is this wrong? And because there were some, as you can see in our study, that were quite high. But, you know, we graded on the curve, and the bottom of the curve was at 5%. And that's where it should be. Asset management is another totally silly, misrepresented argument. There is asset management in every single property, and it is included in that management fee when we do an appraisal or we do market. And that asset management can be something so small, such as you've got a small mom and pop operation, you rent to somebody, the cost of the gas for your car to drive the check to the bank and deposit it. That's not recoverable, but it's an expense, and it's something we keep in mind when we're doing an appraisal or we're doing a valuation. In Collier's records, we always throw in a management fee, whether there is one or not, because there are costs, and the investor, his time is not free. Generally, accounting fees aren't recovered. Filing your taxes are generally not recoverable. Those are all costs to bear, and in an appraisal and in a sale, they're put in. We've got these wonderful sheets in our brokerage department that detail every single time. They take all the expenses and they slap a management fee on there. Investment guys go out and say, this is the income that the properties generate, because we don't want to misrepresent. Now, big companies have 2 layers of management, and that's because the assets are so huge that they need a property manager and they need an asset manager, and that's just a fact of life. The asset manager deals with things the property manager doesn't deal with, the running of the financial operations. Those things aren't free. Everybody has to consider them when they're buying a purchase. The small-time investor doesn't really think about these. I have a lot of clients, this one, by the way, is one of them, 943 Notre Dame. I'll tell you where his asset management gets involved. It's a husband and wife and their 2 sons, and they own several properties. And
This is summation of the argument here.
This is summation of
You're
management
You're giving
fees.
us new
No,
information.
No, I want to give you an example of a small-time operator. Now, they I go and meet Tony.
Mr. Chairman, I agree, this was supposed to be a short summation of the issue and.
It's a big issue, and I'm talking about asset management. I go to Tony, I meet Tony at the site at 943 Notre Dame. Tony doesn't charge the property for it in his statement, but it's time out of his life, it's not free. There's always cost to be involved. So the issue with, that's why that allowance is in place. It has been accepted, not just accepted, but forcibly thrust upon us by the Appraisal Institute and by the brokers. That is the market. And the law says we follow the market, not what the assessor's made up rules are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that is that issue. We will continue on with your,
So we're not gonna hear this brought up anymore, I can go?
yes, that's right, we won't deal with this again.
You're relieved.
Sad to see you go. We have your brief to go through now.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Do we have a 2-minute recess?
Yes,
Sorry.
we will take a break.
Make it 5, I have to go.
I call the hearing back to order. We will begin with Mr. Newfeld's brief, 943 Notre Dame.
I did have a chance to inspect the site, and I did revise our potential net income just a slight bit. And I do have pictures here as well. Pictures of the inside and some comparables. Yeah, that's what happened. When this was originally done, we looked at the mailer and we were a little confused by it, and we do know Tony, and we weren't really sure if this was actually occupied. Once it was inspected, we realized it was, and this was an actual, correctly reported mailer. However, we did notice that the property management was significantly high at 17,000, so we did adjust it. So in my revised 943 Notre Dame brief, the 3-pager that I gave you, at the very bottom, under my request for 400,000, there is a total income of 88,745, and that's from the mailer. Expenses without management, that's everything except the management. And then another deduction for 5% of the total income to get us a 43,869 as a net income for this site. With stabilized management, and obviously he was reporting his property management way too high. And had we been reporting that property management at that number, it would be essentially double dipping for that management down at the bottom of the line afterwards. The cap rate we applied was 9. That I did not change, mostly because of this is not a great building. It's a wood frame with a masonry block structure. The repair costs are ongoing constantly. And in an area that vacancies are generally not filled in immediately, people aren't lining up the door to rent on 943 Notre Dame. And the tenant is actually leaving in 2019, and there is already a sign up front for leasing. And from my understanding, there's no, from what the owner did indicate, there is no interest in it yet. So should it be on the open market on today, it would the cap rate would be affected by that upcoming vacancy. Going through my second page is just the interior pictures. You can see here it's wide open. That I think that the top one there is that front part where you can see the yeah, you can see, so you can see the front blue part there where the windows are covered by the Valley ink cabinet there, and then exposed ceiling. And it was obviously quite messy. They are in the process of vacating, but this is how it looks in general. Our actual rent, we are relying on actual rent for this hearing, and our cap rate is higher than, our cap rate is at 9. I want to focus mostly on my page. Sorry. 13 of the main brief. We've gone through the slate portfolio a lot, and I'm sure there'll be questions on it, but I want to focus more on 15 Rothwell. Now, this is the Mercedes car auto body. Now, the way that this cap rate was created is they took the way that the rent was derived was to take the construction costs of the building and an 8% return over the 10-year period, or sorry, an 8% return per year to come to the rent. So this cap rate is a full uninhibited cap rate of a rate of return that somebody built a building and had someone come in there and get an 8% rate of return for a Mercedes body shop. Now, none of the subject properties that we're seeing today are as good as the Mercedes body shop, and I think that 8% is what we are really talking about when we say an optimal industrial cap rate, and that's basically we would use that as a starting point and then grow from there. Now, obviously, this subject has a tenant leaving, is much older, wood frame, masonry mixed, built in 1953, and the location is nowhere near as great. So for that reason, we have raised it a whole point, and we are requesting $400,000 for with a 9% cap. And it is lower than the 2018 assessment, and that's just mostly because the tenant is leaving. And if it were to be sold with the tenant leaving, that would affect its marketability. Thank you. And sorry.
Okay. Questions from the assessor?
You keep using post-reference, referencing the tenant leaving.
Correct.
But it's being
Yeah,
tenanted?
I didn't reflect it in the vacancy. A cap rate is, a cap rate to an investor is based on anticipation. If you see April 1st of 2018 that a tenant is leaving and you speak to the tenant and you know that they're not going to stay, then that would affect the capitalization value.
And so how long has the owner known that the tenant is leaving?
I didn't ask them. I don't know.
What is he doing to market the property?
He's leasing it himself. He's, as you were aware, many of his properties, as he indicated to us, he's considered leasing with someone like Colliers, but the type of tenant that it attracts requires an incredible amount of tenant improvements and work to his buildings, as they are rough buildings, for no sake of a better term. Anyone that Colliers is attracting wants him to put tens of thousands of dollars in it first, would want him to put tens of thousands of dollars in it first.
And what is 15 Rothwell, well, where is that located?
Just on Kenston, basically, across from the Terracon developments.
So nowhere near the subject?
No, and again, that's what I indicated, it's, that would be our optimal rate.
And what kind of property is it?
Industrial is the best way, it's a body shop.
It's a body shop?
Yeah. But a body shop is just basic steel, pole frame, steel, just basic industrial building.
Auto body.
Auto body, sorry, yes.
And what was the sales price of that?
It was constructed, this is an 8% cap, this is a greater return based on a construction project.
Sorry?
It's a rate of return based on a construction project. Very common for appraisal theory to use actual,
So the property hasn't sold,
no, this is an actual cap rate.
so it's a cap rate not based on a sale price?
No, it's based on actual capitalization rates that are, an appraiser will use.
Okay, and the 15 properties you list as part of the slate portfolio, I believe Tricia has reached out to try and get a breakdown of that between the 15 properties. Do you have a breakdown available?
Again, a breakdown would be misleading, he sold as one. And much like when you, our contention always when a property comes in, say it be a mixed use with an apartment or a commercial unit, there's only one cap rate, it only sells once. So it's very similar to when you're having two different cap rates on a site. It's one transaction, it's one cap rate, and quite honestly, the properties that were sold on this are either identical to, or not identical, very similar to the subject or better.
Mr. Chairman, we'll have a rebuttal to present on that portfolio sale specifically.
these sales here? you're
Yes,
talking
there's
about?
15 of them. We believe it's, because there's so many that it's important to get clarity on that.
Okay,
We can present the rebuttal after Mr.
After we
Neufeld
fin-
is done.
yeah, after, and we finish all our questions, and we'll look at your rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Okay. Are you finished your questions? No?
So
No.
you said that you're using their actual rent?
Yeah, with a stabilized management, yeah, the mailer, the mailer that was provided to the city, actuals with a stabilized management. Correct. And, sorry, I guess I didn't get into it, but the 9634 is the reported area on the mailer. The 831 was the shed that you indicated, and they don't report it, but obviously they use it, so I added that space in.
Okay, so that's the shed space.
The
not-
831, yeah, and then the 9634 is the leased space. But they're using, the lessee is using that shed.
Right. And the 5% is management is for what?
We've gotten into that. I don't think I need to reiterate that. I believe that, is that fair to say, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you believe that their rent is market rent?
For this building, yeah, this is gonna sit forever, when it goes, he's gonna need to take whatever he can get.
What do you mean it's gonna sit forever?
This isn't going to fill up fast. This is not the type of building that people are lining up the door to rent. This is, just a rough industrial building in a atypical area, or not an atypical area, but an undesirable area.
So he was, because historically, it's been tenanted.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, but again, he's had to, he's only been getting $43,000, which is what it's below, this building is below the market that you're bringing forward, and it is reasonable to assume that when it does release, it will be something similar to this 43, below the comparables that we would generally see in an assessment parameter.
Okay, he has quite a few properties, this.
Yeah, he does, yeah, good enough.
A lot of them are vacant, he bought them vacant.
The one we inspected, he definitely bought vacant. 1369, this other one on the docket was not vacant when he purchased it. It was appraised with a tenant. This one I can't answer that. I don't know if it was vacant when he bought it.
Okay. Do you think is he a good investor?
He's got low grade, these are not high grade investment buildings, but I don't know if it works well for him personally, no.
Do you think he's a good at marketing his space? I know he mentioned he was advertising through Kijiji and.
Yeah, and again, for the type of people that you get in buildings like this, yes, because I think that you're gonna get some sort of nail salon that looks on Kijiji that doesn't wanna pay our fees.
Okay, well, okay, those are all my questions.
Thank you.
Richard?
No, I think that's clear. No questions.
Cynthia?
So you're basing the fact that this is worth significantly less than the previous assessed value just on the fact that it's vacant?
Well, our 44,
Or it's going to be vacant?
it is going vacant, so the $84,000 difference would be that would be our request. Again, we likely would have put in some sort of value lower than the 400 in 2018, but then it would have been given at 484. This is just our opinion of value at 400,000, and there's no real reason to think that this property is getting any better. I don't think any evidence suggests that.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Okay, on the front, page one of your revised work up here.
Yep.
I'm just a bit confused here.
Of course.
So we've got the net income of 43,869, which is that bottom figure there,
Mhm.
which comes from the total income, expenses, no management.
Correct, deducting every expense except for management, yeah.
And where are those expenses shown?
On, oh, sorry, I didn't get into that, right. My page 3 of my original brief, the mailer.
Okay.
So I stabilized management, I looked at maintenance and I decided that was reasonable considering the building. It was a wood frame and a masonry, two sections. This kind of maintenance would be typical.
Okay, so where they're showing is 31,401, you're showing 43.
Correct.
869.
Yes.
Okay. And then, from there, and I don't want to open this up again, but from there, you're showing a 5% management deduction?
Property management, correct?
Property management?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you can, Tony would argue that his time's worth more than that, and that could arguably be the asset management that we're speaking of.
Okay, but you've also got a stabilized management expense of 5%?
That's 5% of the total income as deducted. Because that would be a standard property management fee.
Okay, and then,
It could be higher, but and of course it is, it's a management fee, so property management, so it's standard.
so then you come out to the NOI of 35,995?
Correct.
By 9%. Okay. My only other question is the idea that it's coming up to be released. Any buildings or tenants come and go all the time, and
Correct.
we don't change the value. The value of the building doesn't change just because a tenant is leaving or et cetera.
But I suppose I was more or less iterating the fact that when a tenant leaves a building like this, it's not exactly the easiest to fill up. You're not gonna sell this building when a tenant's leaving. You're gonna wanna get a tenant in it first, or have an ambitious project that you're going to be doing it with, and it would sell for significantly less. If there was a tenant in there, that perhaps an investor could be attracted a little better.
Well, you would get a tenant by asking market rents. Anyway, thank you very much. That's all my questions. And you
Mr.
would like
Chairman,
to
may I present some rebuttal on cap rate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to give us an explanation of what you've presented here?
Sure. Okay, so the rebuttal evidence will pertain to all the properties, we'll go through it once. 15 properties have been presented in Mr. Neufeld's brief, suggesting that those 15 properties sold as a portfolio for $47 million. Now,
Excuse me, where are these properties in his brief?
page 14 of his original brief, or page 13 and 14. Starting with the second cap rate from the top.
Sorry, so is it every property on these two sheets are part of the portfolio, like all 13 and 14?
Not all, no, just the ones that are noted as slate portfolio. So, the second at the top
Oh,
on
I
page
see,
13.
okay.
Oh, there, got it, okay,
Up
got it,
until
got it,
the
yeah,
first three
yeah,
on
got it,
page
okay,
14.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, now, okay, continue on, sorry.
Okay, so, first of all, we would have a bit of a problem as using a portfolio sale as the IAAO does as well, because it's difficult to distinguish the value between properties involved and the allocations and so forth. Now, we've asked several times how the $47 million were allocated between the properties so that we could rough out what the cap rates might be for the individual properties. And we've been told that that information is not forthcoming, that it might be misleading. My comments on that are, starting on page 1 of my rebuttal brief. The agent for the owner includes a portfolio sale of multiple properties in his cap rate evidence, labeled as the slate portfolio. On November 24th, 2015, Slate Office REIT announced the sale of a portfolio of 12 Winnipeg industrial properties totaling 516,495 square feet for $47 million. The agent for the owner has listed 15 properties as part of this $47 million portfolio. All of Slate Office REIT's news releases and regulatory filings confirmed that there were in fact 12 properties sold, not 15 as the agent states. The 3 additional properties listed by the agent as part of the portfolio sale were never owned by Slate Office REIT. Obviously, Slate Office REIT could not have sold properties that they never owned. It appears that the agent for the owner has used the NOIs from the 15 properties against the sale price of 12 properties in his cap rate calculation. The cap rate concluded therefore is skewed to the high side. Rob Preto, a Collier's associate in Winnipeg, notes in his Q1 2016 cap rate summary, he notes the Slate Office REIT sale of 12 Winnipeg industrial properties for $47 million. He does not refer to an 8.6 cap rate as the agent does. Rather, he notes that cap rates for industrial properties have typically been 6.5% to 7% for good quality buildings. If you'll turn to page 2 of my brief, we have tried to simplify this portfolio sale with the help of a chart. So the original company involved here was Huntington Capital Corporation. At some point, Huntington Capital created a REIT named FAM REIT on the left side there and spun out a certain number of their properties into this REIT. And they retained a 30% holding of this REIT, and they managed the REIT. They kept for their own property portfolio the other 3 properties shown on the right there. And along came Slate Capital Corporation in late 2014, and they bought 100% of Huntington. When they bought 100% of Huntington, they took over the FAM REIT, and they renamed it Slate Office REIT with those properties, those 12 properties listed there. They also took over Huntington Properties portfolio and ran them under Slate Management Corporation, the 3 properties listed on the right. So to reiterate, Slate Office REIT never owned and could not have sold 2019-2021 Sargent, 1950 Sargent, and 2595 McGilvery. So the agents using the NOIs from all 15 properties against the sale price of 12 properties has skewed the cap rate higher. Allocations of the $47 million sale price among the properties have not been provided by the agent. We have asked several times. If you'll turn to page 3 of my brief, this is the press release from Slate Office REIT when they sold this property portfolio. Highlighted there, it says, included in the transactions is a portfolio comprising 12 industrial properties located in Winnipeg, totaling 516,000 square feet. The Manitoba portfolio sold to an undisclosed purchaser for $47 million. If you'll turn to page 2, or the next page over, I should say, my page 4, this was part of the news release, and it lists the properties there, and there's 12 properties listed, not 15. The first 12 that are listed. So this is Slate Office REIT's official regulatory filing, news release, stating that they sold 12 industrial properties. Does not make any mention of the final 3 because they didn't sell them. Those properties were sold by Slate, but not Slate Office REIT. Slate Management Corp had 100% ownership of those and sold them separately. If you look on page 7, we'll see, and this is also in the agent's brief, it's a summary of the Q1 2016 cap rates. And this particular study, cap rate table is put together by Rob Preto along with his comments there. And the last paragraph on the right side, he notes that Slate recently announced the sale of 12 properties in Winnipeg, totaling 516,495 square feet. He also notes that cap rates for industrial properties have typically been 6.5% to 7%. So if Rob Preto was aware of an 8.6 cap rate that Mr. Neufeld is touting, it makes one wonder why he's not using it here in his cap rate table. In fact, for industrial single-tenant A properties, the range is 6 to 7%. For multi-tenant B properties, 6.25% to 7.25%. The reason he's not referencing 8.6 is because there was 12 properties, not 15. If you'll turn to page 8 of my brief, this is a page from Slate Office REIT's regulatory filings under number 6, dispositions. They note that they sold the property in June of 2015 for $6.7 million. And then they note on December 21st, 2015, that they sold 12 industrial properties for $47 million. So again, that confirms from Slate Office REIT's regulatory filings that there was 12 and not 15 properties. The other 3 properties there, as I say, Slate Management held ownership of those and sold them, but not part of this portfolio. They sold them for a separate sum. 2595 McGilvery, for example, sold for $4 million. Outside of that $47 million. 1950 Sargent also sold. We haven't been able to determine what that was sold for. And 2019 Sargent was also sold on its own for $1 million. So those properties were outside of this portfolio sale. The point I'm trying to make is this 8.6 based on a sale of 15 properties for $47 million didn't happen. 12 properties were sold. It's misleading. Allocations could be provided to us to clear this up. We've been able to determine the allocations on 4 of the properties that have since resold. The ones that have resold, the purchaser of the portfolio has disclosed what they paid for them initially in the portfolio purchase. And doing a calculation of the cap rates, we see they're in the range of 6 to 6.5%, not 8.6%. So Rob Preto has it right. I'm afraid that the agent perhaps has some misinformation or misunderstood the transaction. So to put that 8.6% in perspective, it doesn't really exist. It's in error. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see if Mr. Neufeld has any questions.
Yes, Mr. Penner, you're familiar with the airport setup. Who owns the land in the airport? If you're
HMQ.
operating- So when you are operating a business or a building on airport land, you don't own that land, do you? You
No.
lease it.
You
You
lease
really
it.
think that they would report to the security exchanges 3 lease buildings they purchased, wasting assets?
Yes, they have to report everything that they own.
They do, they report them as land.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
They report it as land.
No, they don't.
Now, you have that information?
Yes,
Sure.
I do.
Let's see, where is that information?
Huntington reports it as ground lease.
Ground lease, land.
1950, 2019, 21.
Ground lease,
21,
land.
and pardon me?
Ground lease, land.
Yes, right.
Land.
Yeah,
It's
but
land.
they show what building they have on it as well.
Of course they do for their own internal systems, but if they're
No,
selling
no,
it, they
these
only
these
sell
are
it as land.
documents filed with the regulatory authorities,
As a ground
not for their
lease.
internal system.
As a ground lease.
Yes.
So you're suggesting that, okay, so you're arguing my point then. The third one then,
What?
you had mentioned that there was a $4 million sale. Was that a sworn value or an actual sale price?
That's disclosed by Vermont when they subsequently sold 2595 McGilvery.
After this sale? So this
They
is a
purchased it
second.
for $4 million, they sold it subsequently for $4.8 million.
They disclosed that to you, so where does that
It's,
say that it's not part of the $47 million? It's a
It's
land.
right here. They purchased it for $4 million.
how do you know that it's not part of the original 47 allocation? Where are you
Because
showing
Slate
it?
Office REIT didn't sell it, they didn't own it. Huntington owned it, Slate Management took over. Slate Office REIT sold 12 properties
Where are
for
you showing this?
47.
Can I see what page you're referring to?
What would you like to see?
What page are you referring to?
It's not in my
Okay.
rebuttal, but
Thank you.
if you want to see this document, it's right here.
I would, if you want to present it as evidence, then sure.
I don't think I need to, I think the point being, Slate Office REIT owned and sold 12 properties, not 15, for 47 million.
And again, the statement, the assessor is incorrect. I have business questioning, so sorry.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at that then. We have questions of Mr. Neufeld's brief. I think is where we are. You
We
finished
have
your
questions on this
presentation?
rebuttal, right?
Rebut on the cap.
On the cap.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll,
I have no questions on that.
I have none either, no.
and I have none, I think it's been gone through and questioned. Now, you've questioned, I'm sorry, you've questioned Mr. Neufeld on his brief,
Yeah.
so now the panel will ask Mr. Neufeld questions on his brief. Oh, no,
Oh,
we have as well.
did that too, yeah.
Did that too.
Okay, so I think,
There's
Pardon
so
me.
much going on here, it's
Yeah.
not surprising.
Representation or?
yes, we could have summation on the property. We've had summation on the management issue already. We can have summation on the property if you like, if you would like to conclude
Okay.
with something.
I'm just gonna, in summation, my lower value of 598,000. Looking at market rents, not the actual rent paid there, because I don't believe that's market. And my cap rate also at 7.7%, falls at the higher range of our cap rate range, where most of our cap rates tend to fall. So I ask the board to confirm the reduced value of 598,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, would you like to say something in summation?
Just that the Slate Office REIT is 47 million with 15 buildings. He's told you many times before, Rocky has had interviews with both owners and purchaser, vendor and purchaser. It's a real cap rate. I wouldn't want to believe it is anymore. And on top of that, our main cap rate that we are relying on is an actual rate of return of 8% of a body shop at a much better than the subject. And the actual rent would apply very obviously in this subject, because that there is no real reason to suggest that it would be what the assessor is showing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I be excused? I was,
Yes, by all means. That concludes 943 Notre Dame. We will move to 488 Brunel.
thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right. Rule number 1303007510. 488 Burnell Street, the roll year is 2020, and we have an assessed value of 944,000. There's 4 buildings on this property. The year built was 1924. It's zoned R2 residential. The land area is 27,813 square feet. The plan area is 12,903 square feet, giving a land to plan area of 2.16. Turn to page 2, you can see there's been no sales. This is an owner-occupied property, so there are no leases. On the next couple of pages, I have some photographs. You can see the front, the exterior of the building, and then some aerial views. Moving on to page 5, again, we have our capitalization chart, where they range from 5.5% at the low end to 9.8% at the very high end. 60% fall between 6.34% and 7.8%. And on the following page, we have the income workup. There's a total leasable area of 21,972 square feet, and we have a overall rate of $4.82 on the property. Vacancy loss of 6%, expenses at 2%, a shortfall rate of $3.75, giving us a net operating income of $86,098. And the overall cap rate is 9.8%, which is at the highest cap rate in our cap rate chart. And that gives us our $879,000. Oh, sorry. What did I do? Okay. See, I was recommending $897, which was our value last cycle.
So,
Okay, so
So, sorry, so that should be
Yeah.
what, sorry?
this is the wrong workup for the 944, which we've assessed it at this cycle. So this workup is for what I wanted to reduce it to. I had a recommendation to reduce it to the 2018 value, which was $897,000.
897?
Yes.
But the workup says 879, is that just transposed, or is that?
I don't know what happened here. Okay, I'm gonna have to, it should, I think there's an error in my workup somehow.
It looks like 879 is the right number,
879.
rounding up.
878. Okay, well, that doesn't support either value. So I would have to go with the 879 since it's here.
Okay, well, my question to Mr. Dufeld is, are you happy with 879?
No, I asked the owner, he said if you could sell it for that, he wouldn't even think about it.
Okay. Okay, well.
Okay, I'll continue. I wanted to, this property is unique in that it's on a residential street. It's an industrial property, and it's near impossible to find comparables for this property. And so in putting in my comparables, I almost made a dummy brief because I would rather the board decide than, the only thing that I did have was $897,000. That was their previous assessment and they did not appeal it. Now, for the 2020 cycle, it increased by 5.4%. So not a lot, and in 2018, they did not appeal the $897,000.
And the increase took it to 944, the
Yes.
5.2. Okay, I understand. Continue.
Okay, so in my comparables, which I don't necessarily consider comparable to the subject, because I was looking for something older, as this is a 1924 building with lower wall heights. And I have ranged from $1.11, which is on William Avenue, right downtown, up to $4.53 on Coulter Avenue. These are both a mix of storage warehouses and loft warehouses. And that's about all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Questions from Mr. Newfeld?
Yeah, how would you describe the property? What type of property would it compare to the rest of the city, I suppose?
How would I describe it?
Yeah, after inspecting it, would you still say it's storage warehouse, or would you say it's more loft warehouse?
More loft warehouse, yeah.
Okay. So, your capitalization rate, the 9.8 was model generated?
Yes.
So what are, this was obviously not Pacta's loft warehouse, it's storage warehouse. So what are the differences that would create it to go from a different between a 7.7 and a 9.8? What are the differences in your system that would allow for that?
So the things that determine cap rate are size, age,
Okay.
and location.
So size, I mean, this is more of a residential area per se,
Yeah.
but size is bigger, age is a little older, location is relatively the same as the last one, but you're 2 points different.
Yeah, but this is also a very old building.
So you're saying the age is for, the 2 points is attributed to the age?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any cap rates in between 9.8 and 7.8, model driven? Or does it go from 7.8 to 9.8?
I'm not sure.
Not sure, okay. So would it be reasonable to assume that if this was, say, 10 years older, the cap would come out at 7.8? 7 years newer, sorry, it might come out at 7.8?
I can't say anything.
20 years perhaps?
I don't know.
Okay, okay. You had mentioned that it's not easy to find comparables for the subject, correct? Would you do a direct comparison on the subject? Would you consider that? It would be reasonable to be sold for redevelopment, would it not?
That could be one of the.
Okay. And then R2, the zoning is R2, correct?
Yes.
What is the use inside?
They're book publishing and magazine publishing.
Do you think that is that permitted in an R2 zoning? Residential two-family?
I think it was grandfathered in there.
So, but it would be a
no,
non-conforming use, correct?
Non-conforming,
Yes, okay.
yes.
Thank you, those are my questions.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more question, just a quick one. Your comparables, I wrote it down here. Your comparable here, Coulter, you have Coulter here, that is the idea here that you were trying to find older areas, residential, somewhat similar.
Yeah.
Is Coulter a residential area like that?
Oh, no,
No,
I
okay.
couldn't find residential areas.
Oh, you couldn't, okay,
No,
sorry.
so all I found was
Older kind of
older,
style.
kind of lost style.
Okay, but Coulter's not a loft, is it? It's in like light manufacturing.
It's storage warehouse is what we have
What
it.
you have it as? Okay.
But I think I picked that because of the ceiling height and because of the age, but.
Okay, fair enough. The ceiling height, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Yes, I'm looking at your photos on page 4. And we're showing the age of the building 1912 to 1959. Do you have a sense of the 4 parts? I think you said there were 4 buildings here.
Yeah.
The age of is the big 2-story part the oldest part?
The front part, yeah, the front, okay, so the biggest one, if you look at the top page, the one with the windows, I believe that's, it's hard to say.
I would imagine, yeah, because it would likely be the old portion on the street, and then they would have add additions to the back and pieces. And that, I think is, and it's also, it's very solid construction, that front piece, sorry not to answer for you, so
No,
it'd
that's
be
okay.
reasonable, that's a solid construction built when it was built.
Yeah, we actually went to inspect it together, and learned that it was a creamery. And I actually Googled it to see the history on it, and it was a creamery where they made ice cream, and the very back building, because when they started this company, they used to have horses and buggies that carried their product.
Sure.
So they actually had stables in the back.
Oh, yes.
So it's safe to say the preponderance of the area of the
Yes.
square footage is in that two-story structure based on the photograph and looking at the footprint.
Yes.
So the preponderance is in that. Do you know the date of the two middle, the white colored add-on there? Do you know when they were built?
Well, I have between 1912 and 1959. So,
But they're a different appearance than
Right.
the back structure, the fourth structure, which is brick more akin to the front structure. But you can't pin down the timing
no,
of those.
I don't have
Sorry,
the exact
Did you
years.
say that was the stable original? Could he have put the addition, the join them, someone in the 50s? Joining the
Oh, so
stable
the
to
middle
front?
part,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, he may have mentioned something of that nature, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What I'm looking at is you probably want a separation between your stable and your creamery.
yeah,
And the back section could be, again, adding to my comment about the square footage, original, and the white roofed
Yeah.
section be middle.
yeah.
So significantly preponderance of square footage would be very old.
Yeah.
I'm getting to your cap rate and
Okay.
the use of that cap rate. Okay, that helps me understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia?
No, I don't think I have anything, thank you.
Would the Mulvey address be sort of residential? Do you know that?
Is that the one that's on the east side of Osborne?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, it's getting into the residential area, yeah.
Yeah, if it's east of Osprey.
Does this building have a heritage designation, the front part?
It doesn't.
Doesn't?
No.
And you said that they're book publishing, so they're using all the space, the right white roofed area in the
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
former stable that's being used?
Yeah.
Okay.
May I
What's
ask,
the best, a second, what's the best comparable that we should look at? Pardon me, number one?
Just give me 1 second. That's, I would say either Mulvey or Adelaide.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions.
Oh, I had just one, so I just want to clarify, so you had, your recommendation was 897 and your workup is 879.
Right.
So which number do you want us to use?
I'm gonna go with the recommendation number.
With the 897?
897.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I can't do that now, because I have an error. I think I have to go with it.
What it says.
Yeah.
So with your workup, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, that's why I just clarified, because it kind of went back and forth a few times there, I just want to be sure, no, it's okay, I just want to be sure that I've got
Cross your eyes when you read it.
the right number, yeah.
Mr. Chair, may I ask another question?
Yes, go right ahead.
Did the two of you go inside the building?
We did.
Yes.
Okay, so can you comment on the condition of the inside of the building? What's it look like?
Sorry, I have pictures, do you want? is that
Oh, are
okay?
they in your?
Yeah.
They're-
No,
I'm about town.
I think her comments would be,
Oh, sure, sorry,
You guys read
I
the
just,
building.
I figured it would be, but please.
Okay,
No, sorry, you didn't-
The building is really solid. There's some obsolescence in there. There's like a freight elevator and whatnot, and I mean, there are areas of the concrete flooring where it was, dimpled and whatnot, and they did say that, when there was water leaking from the roof, it drains down into those areas. And there was a section also on the second floor where it looked, and the owner had thought that when they built the second floor, that they deliberately built one of the floors to be was curved this way or this way for some
Yeah,
reason.
Okay.
I guess
Yeah, it was
it's
sloped,
sloped,
but it looked like it had been done deliberately for whatever reason.
Raining ice cream.
Yeah, I don't know. And there was one section that we walked through on the top floor where you could see where one of the additions was separated from the other buildings. So there was a crack between the two buildings, and you could actually see daylight through there.
I'm thinking more of the flooring, the beams, is it a post and beam? That's a old
Yeah.
building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was.
Hardwood floors in the second
No,
floor?
hardwood floors? No, they were concrete floors.
Oh, concrete on the
Yeah,
second? oh,
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, for its age, it's doing well.
The front portion is solid,
Yeah.
that 1912 portion
Yeah.
is solid.
And the
Okay.
back portion, more like a storage area where?
Well, yeah, the stable's now sort of, I guess you wouldn't call
They
it.
use that for shipping.
Yeah,
And
I-
see, that's probably the worst part of it.
Right, I called it cold storage because he didn't really have the heat on in it,
Yeah.
but he says it was sort of heated, so
He
it's
said
just they
it's-
don't need
yeah.
it, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that, now you will.
Quick follow-up question.
Sure.
You indicated it was a loft, you said it was a loft warehouse somewhat, correct? That's fair. So the loft warehouse parameter would be 12% vacancy, correct? For all industrial loft warehouses?
I haven't done a loft
You haven't
warehouse
done it,
this
okay.
cycle, so I'm not sure. You
You'll have to
could be
take my
right.
word for it then.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
And I do have revisions and pictures. The revisions are mostly for that vacancy I did mention, the 12%, and there was an error in my total square footage, if you just see that there. I just didn't add it up. So I just wanted to point that out. So when I inspected it, wasn't exactly going to bring a new approach, but I think logically, if this were to sell, it would be for redevelopment into an apartment, and it would likely sell for direct comparison. I didn't bring any direct comparison, and I'm not gonna bring rates, and I'm not gonna say anything, but it would likely sell for price per square foot, not its rental ability. Price per square foot, that's something that it could repurpose. I did stick with our 10% cap rate, as the assessor is at 9.8. I don't think we're very far off there, and I think obviously our concepts are somewhat similar. We have property here that is that is R2 zoned, so it is zoned for multifamily, and they're operating a commercial business out of it. So the city's are in a way, sort of trying to force them out, not forcibly, but if they were to get a permit, if they want to do work, if they want to change use of this building, you're likely not gonna get approval for anything other than multifamily. So our rents, I supplied is $4 on the main, that includes the stable, so it might be a little up and down depending on if you wanted to allocate certain rents in certain areas. The stable is definitely worse, and as you can see on my handouts, it is on page 8 there. You can just see the roof. That's the roof there, and then the opening, and it's just, it is what it is. It looks exactly like what it is, and it works for their purposes. The assessor did mention that you can see how one of the additions is separating. I tried to show it as best as I could on page 10. That's the separating that's the flooring there on the second floor, and you can see daylight there in that little picture. It's not very well shown, but I did my best. And then the section that was added that was being discussed is on page 9. So that page 9 you see on the bottom picture, that is the middle addition, so to connect the two pieces, and that is now essentially separating from the rest of them, because it looks like as though it was likely added 30 years up or 40 years after the fact. Rents for this, like the assessor said, are very hard. It's difficult mostly because of the area. There are a lot of properties like this that are renting, but we're mostly in the Exchange or downtown area, or I guess suppose the North End. or somewhat north end. So on my page 5, these are also all essentially loft warehouses, very similar to the subject, that are being used for similar purposes and renting out sections. You're not, to suggest the assessment department's total annual rental value for this is $98,000. To suggest that someone would pay $100,000 a year to be in this building, I think is a little high, and I think the market evidence suggests that, and I don't think, if you were even to market it to somebody as a rental unit, it just wouldn't really make sense. Again, like I said, a direct comparison might be more appropriate considering its highest and best use, but I did not present that today. So for that reason, I'm asking that you use rents that are of similar nature buildings, however they are further away, more in the downtown core, strictly because they would have been built at around the same time, have the same, very similar styles, maybe even designed by the same people for all I know. And that's why I chose $4 and $3 for that. And then, of course, the vacancy, as we know, there is a different vacancy parameter for loft warehouses. I didn't bring it, I assumed that we would just know it, so that's why I brought it up in questioning, but that's fair if we haven't done it, so, but anyway, I do have it showing as 12%, and that is in the assessment parameter model, the handout. So for that reason, I am requesting 512, and I think the condition and the marketability of this property are evidence for a drastic reduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions of the appellant?
I think my only issue is the 5% management fee. This is an owner occupied company?
Okay, yeah, and again, you know our position on that, so I
Yeah.
already had it.
Okay, there's no management fee.
Yeah, that's fair. And I also, I forget it, I can't keep speaking out of turn, I'll leave this one.
That's all.
Richard, questions?
Oh, I'm good.
On the original workup, you used 6%. And
Yes, a vacancy, yes, yeah.
it came out to 618.
Correct,
Is that-
the other change is the shortfall went up a bit higher because of the vacancy and the area. I didn't total the area properly, it was just using a 12,000 shortfall. Is that what you're asking, sorry?
I'm asking how the value changed from 618 to 512. Is it just a
It's
changing of?
mostly the vacancy and the error in the area input, because the shortfall went up when the area went up and the vacancy went up too.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is owner occupied?
Correct.
Has it been owner occupied for a long time?
As far as I know, yeah.
That's all my questions.
Thank you.
So that will, if there's any summation, assessor?
I think I'm good.
Just quickly, the assessor's comparable 3, I did have a picture of it. I just would like to draw your attention to it. I do not think that is comparable. But other than that, the assessor's comparables are in line with what I'm asking for and make sense. And I would ask that you just use similar types for rent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. That concludes 488 for now. And we will look at 1369 Aaron Street. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Roll number 13011453100, 1369 Aaron Street. This is for roll year 2020, we have an assessed value of $730,000. There are 2 buildings on the property, 1 and 2 story, with an effective year of 1977, wall heights of 18 feet. It's zoned M1, light manufacturing. The land area is 12,554 square feet. The plan area is 5,662 square feet, giving a land to plan area of 2.22. And on the following page, there's just a map of the subject property, as well as their parcel. And going forward, I have some aerial view pictures. And then some exterior photos on the next page. And you'll see on page 5, there's been no sales on the property. And they have complied with our request for information. On page 6, again, we have our cap rate chart. And 60% of our cap rates fall between 6.34 and 7.80. On page 7, I have an income workup. You'll see there's a leasable area of 9,044 square feet with a rent of $6.99, vacancy of 6%, expenses at 2%, a shortfall rate of $3.75, with a net operating income of $56,201, and an overall cap rate of 7.70, bringing us to our assessed value of $730,000. Turning to page 8, I have some rental comparables. And there's one I would like you to take out. 595 Wall Street, could you please cross that out? That is not a good comparable.
Can I ask why for no actual reason? Just curious. I wanna know.
You know why.
I wanna know what you think. Thanks.
I was looking for similar types of buildings in the area, in around Wall and Erin. They're all storage warehouse buildings in the same market region, with rents ranging between $4.75 and $8.50, which support our rental rate of $6.99. I inspected this property. It's in good condition, and it has quite a bit of office finish, more than I realized until I went in there. It has, if you look at the picture, actually, the brick building, that's both main floor and second floor office. And then they have their warehouse in the back. So I asked the board to confirm our value of $730,000. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we will have questions. Do you have some questions?
Just quickly, the $6.99, so that obviously then, that's a blended rate of main floor, second floor, and warehouse.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. And then the warehouse, I mean, it was a warehouse, right? The finishing would be different than the office,
Yeah.
obviously. I think those are it. Yeah, those are all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, Richard?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Good too, thank you.
What did they do in here, within this building?
What do they call it? It's an engineering company.
So they have office space, And then storage for equipment that
Yeah.
they use and things?
Yeah, we don't do a lot of shipping or anything like that.
Are any of the comparisons sort of in with the same use or same amount of office space, do you think?
Yes, I picked one. Oh, 931 Wall Street. And also 971 Wall Street.
Okay. That's all my questions. Mr. Newfeld, if you would like to give us your information.
I did, of course, I reviewed everything yesterday, and there were just another small review. I did lower the rent a slight bit and raised our cap, or I guess lower our cap. Secretary,
Thank you.
We're basically just accepting the $6.99 assessment rent on the main floor office, and then suggesting that the second floor would rent for less and that the warehouse would as well. And then raising our cap up to 8 as it is our optimal. This wouldn't necessarily be an investment grade building. However, it is, with the rents it would generate, I don't think it would be, the rents that we are applying, I think the cap makes sense to go lower like that. The $6.99 is, I think, fair for a main floor, but when you're renting a place like this, it's generally to get some office space with a warehouse. This warehouse is quite small. The users that would use this would be somewhat limited for that reason. An engineering firm like this subject would make a bit of sense because they wouldn't have much product or much warehouse needs. There would be more of an office space with the additional warehouse need. So I think the rent for that reason makes a lot of sense, and then the cap is lower because it's a rent that is reflective of, or the cap is reflective of that rent. And of course, we ask that the management be applied, and then the rest of the parameters stay the same. Thank you. And our cap rate is only 0.3% away from the city, so we are less at odds for that.
Okay.
And of course, I have pictures in my revision, or in my revised brief as well. Just basic, simple office and
Okay.
stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of?
Your rent, do you have any rent comparable?
Let's see, what would be most comparable? The border ones actually, they're multi-tenanted, but they're similar style where there is front office and then a large warehouse at the back. St. James is somewhat, again, multi-tenanted. Yeah, I mean, considering the area, 1215 border is somewhat comparable, although bigger, but I would consider, I guess I would say that the 1347 border, which is about 10 down from the top, would be the most comparable, just because it's very nearby and a similar vintage and similar finishings and a similar style of building, although it is multi-tenanted. It's multi-tenanted with sections of about 10 different buildings.
Okay. So the 1347 border.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a perfect comp, but it's very close, I think.
All right, they're a little bit older, these leases.
The leases are older?
Yeah.
You know, I would have to double check when they were, because they, yeah, they're, the
14
lease,
and
yeah.
15.
You know, those ones, I bet you they would be renewed in 18, so we should be coming up with some that were renewed in 17, yeah, so that's a good point.
So they might be higher.
I wouldn't suggest that, no. I mean, if they're higher, it's cents, not dollars.
Okay. Okay, those are all the questions.
Good. Richard?
I have no questions.
You've listed the 2018 assessment here, and you've come in lower than that. Why would that be?
I guess, just again, it's an opinion of value. We probably would have came up with something close to 519 last time around. We're at 542 with the revision. It was applied at 580. Boards make decisions. We obviously take them into consideration, but we still always generally stick to our evaluation principles. But of course, when you have a number that's favorable to the assessment,
So
original.
this property was appealed previously?
Yes, yeah, and it likely would have been, if I mean, I'm totally guessing, but from 1860, we would see something similar, 730 to 580, and probably with a bit of inflation there.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Thank you.
Is tenanted?
Uh,
You showed rent, there's
yeah,
showing rent income
you know,
on
I think
here.
he's owner occupied. I think that's, because I'm using market rent, I'm using the assessor's 699 and then the market for the second owner.
Okay.
He, yeah, I didn't specifically ask him, he seemed as though the man we met was part of that business, I would imagine, so if it is tenanted, it's not arm's length.
How is it? That's all my questions. Thank you very much. That concludes 1369 Aaron. And we will move on to 1546 Wall Street, please.
I also have a recommendation for this property. I don't know if you want me to go through first and explain it?
Yes, give us a short explanation of it, then we'll query the appellant for particulars.
Thank you.
Okay, this is roll number 130-116-25000. 1546 Wall Street. The roll year is 2020. We have an assessed value of $1,040,000. There's one building on the premise, built in 2011. It's zoned M2. The land area is 59,791 square feet. The plan area is 6,560 square feet with a land plan area of 9.11. Page 2, you'll see several sales, the last one in 2010 for $325,000, and that they've complied with our request for information. On page 3, I have a property area map.
Sorry, just to back you up there.
Sorry.
You mentioned the 2010 sale?
Yeah.
But there's one
Oh,
more
sorry,
recent one, right?
2013.
Yeah, okay, just,
You're right.
yeah,
Thank
just a
you.
quick thing. Okay, thanks.
Most recent. And then there are some photographs, some aerial photos on page 4. And some street photos on page 5. And page page 6, again, we have our cap rate chart. 60% of our cap rates fall between 6.34 and 7.80. And then on page 7 is the income workup. You'll see they have 82,000 square feet of leasable area, and we have a rent rate of $7.06. 6% vacancy loss, 2% for expenses, a shortfall rate of $3.75, giving a net operating income of $51,485, an overall cap rate of 6.5%. We then have an additional land value of $248,000, giving us the value, assessed value of $1,040,000. What I wanted to do here, this is where my recommendation comes in. In their leasable area on page 7 of 82,000, is included in that is 1,640 square feet of storage mezzanine area that I want to remove from the leasable area. So in the workup, the new workup that I gave you, that the new area is 6560. So with an area of 6,560 square feet, rate of $7.16, and the rest is, I believe, the same. Vacancy 6%, 2% expenses, shortfall $375, cap rate of 6.5, and additional land value for $248,000. And if you go back to the brief on page 8, it just shows the additional land is 28,090 square feet at $8.83, giving a value of $248,000. And on page 9, I have some rental comparables. Again, can you please remove 595 Wall Street? So all comparables are in the same market region. They're similar properties. They're all storage warehouse. And the rents range from $6.43 to a high of $7.50. And I have some land sales on page 10. So, for the land sales, I can only find, I'm looking for more recent ones. The most recent ones I can find in the subject area are the first two. 720 Erin is 18,521 square feet of land that sold for $21.60. This is on a corner lot, so it could be a higher rate. Comparable 2 is on Erin Street as well. And this is 24,000 square feet, 24,863 square feet. And it sold for $14.88 a square foot. St. James, the next ones are getting a bit higher. St. James Street is 31,413 square feet at $13.53. Then we have one on Burroughs Avenue for 97,964 square feet at $8.68. And the last one is on Uville Street, 64,896 square feet, and that's sold at $13.87 a square foot. And thank you, Mr. Chair, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, there's a recommendation to lower the value to $891,000.
I am going to accept the NOI of 41,792, if that's okay. I will still contend that the cap, or the land is inapplicable. If that makes sense?
You said you were accepting the NOI, but you're,
41,792, and I will discuss the cap rate
and the land
and the
value.
land, yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll have questions then.
And of course, and I'm ignoring for this reason the management, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. Questions? Yes. So you basically, you remove the mezz, and that's for mostly your recommendation, basically?
Yeah.
What was the reason for removing the mezz?
It's not finished, Ms.
Okay. Your value before land, 642,960, and your recommendation, you see, you're following me? That is is that just the 2018 assessment? Cause that's your rec at
Okay.
891.
Yeah,
Before 248, there's the capitalized value of 642,960.
okay.
Is that just the 2018 assessment with land value added, or is that just a weird coincidence?
That's just a coincidence.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and how does the assessment department define excess land?
We're not quite calling it excess land, but it is additional land. It's anything over and above that's needed for the business. This, if you look at the photos, you can see that,
Because it appears to me that they're using it all the.
you can see that, I mean, the building here doesn't even take up half of the property. It could be subdivided and sold off separately. So we've added a value for that land.
So you're adding a $248,000 value for the hypothetical thought that it could be subdivided. In one day, it could potentially be. That's
Yes.
your opinion, okay. But excess land is defined, I guess, so you're calling it additional land, but excess land is then business, or land that's not used by the business, as you stated, correct?
Yeah,
But this is, the building's using this land, correct, the business is, but you're then calling it additional land as opposed to excess, is that what I'm getting?
it's surplus land, it's land that can be sold off, without getting technical. They do have a lot of land. but
Physical.
that is not,
But they don't have the legal ability to sell that off. do
they don't?
Or I'm asking you, do you know that?
Do you know that?
I do, I know that they would need to get it separately titled, of course.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, so as of its current state, they would require council and going through the motions of getting a variance, correct? In order to build a secondary, to sell that land off.
right, but it could be subdivided and sold separately.
After all the steps are done.
Yeah,
And those steps are not free or easy, of course.
no, but worth it with that value of land and,
Okay, well, that's, I guess, an argument, that's opinion, but we'll leave it at that. Thank you, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Well, more to that point, I'm looking at the map and I'm looking, it's a roofing company,
yes.
yes. And it appears that this is all equipment around the perimeter
Mhm.
and with probably staff parking in the middle. I'm failing to understand how you've assessed that as excess, beyond the needs of the business, excess land.
Well, if somebody else were to move into this building here, that used it for something differently, the other land could be sold off.
And this was a 2011 built, owner occupied since 2011?
It wasn't owner occupied when it was built.
2013 sold? So they've been there for 6 years.
I believe there was someone else in there before them.
But it looks like they bought it in 2013 for
Right,
$675. Okay, no further questions.
So, is this property been assessed with additional land or excess land previously?
Yes.
So in previous cycles, okay. And at what point, like the land to plan area, at what point did you kick that in, do you know?
We look for a ratio of 4:1, so if anything over 4:1, and this is 9:1.
Anything over 4:1? Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
I have no questions. So we will hear from Mr. Neufeld, please.
So again, I guess I'm gonna be going off mostly the assessor's recommendation.
Okay.
The idea here is that it has a high land to building ratio. That is undeniable. There's a high land to building ratio. We don't agree that it is excess land, as you can see on page, and as the panel has pointed out, on page 2, the business is using it. Excess land is defined as, land that is not needed to serve or support the existing or proposed improvement. The highest and best use of excess land may or may not be the same as the highest best use of improved parks. Excess land has the potential to be sold separately and must be valued separately. So an excess land, the assessment department calls it additional land, but I feel that that's more or less just semantics at this point. They're really treating it as excess land because it is an additional value. You could potentially, what I would suggest is that if you were going to assess a higher value of land, you would then either put it in rent or potentially a capitalization rate, as more land, as the assessor suggested, could mean that they could build more on it, and there is more potential, or they could get more rent out of it because there's that yard space. So for that reason, I believe it's still too low, but in order to just simplify this argument, I think the 6.5% at the 41,792 is reasonable for today's hearing. So I am requesting the exact value of 2018 of 643. And I would want to reiterate that cap is very low. It probably, I would change it to 7 if I would think it would make a difference today, but I don't think it would. And if you have that much land, it is reasonable to assume that the cap could be lower, because there is potential for someone to come in and buy that and then expand, if that's their uses that they want. But if the current use, it's not excess land because they are using it. And further to that sale, I want to be able to answer that. I'm waiting for an email. I thought that that they built this in 2011, but I don't have enough information to back that up. I would just suggest that to be cautious when viewing the sale. I don't want to say that 100% is an arm's length, but I don't believe it is an actual transaction. I thought they built it, but again, I don't have that information. So, and so that for that reason, I think the assessor's recommendation, removing the land, excess land, is fair at 643. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
I have no questions.
Richard, questions of the appellant?
None.
You're talking the sale that you're,
I should have
it's a
brought it up.
2013 sale, right?
I shouldn't have brought it up with so little information. I'm a
Yeah,
little
okay,
embarrassed,
but it was the 2013 one you're referring to?
Yeah, and
That's
I-
just all I'm clarifying,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. That's all I had.
If I end up being wrong, appeal it and take me there.
No, what was it that you were wondering?
I just don't think that was an actual sale at 675, but I can't really, I don't know, so I don't,
You don't
it's just
think
the
it
only
was an
reason is
actual
because it
sale?
brought up, yeah, I think it was between two related parties, but
Okay.
I
It wasn't an arm's length sale?
yes,
You
yeah,
think?
yes,
You
I
think,
think, and I don't want to say that.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
definitively.
I have a question about the land.
Correct, for sure.
You are saying that, I think that there is some value to be attributed to having a larger piece of land.
Sure.
And you're suggesting it can be taken up in the cap rate being a little bit lower.
And a potential buyer might look at that and say, we can expand. So there's some value to it, or the rent as well.
But it would be hard to figure out how to adjust the cap rate, or would you agree that it would be hard to figure out how to adjust the cap rate? Because you'd have to find sales of buildings with larger lots and get their cap rate compared. So would you agree that it's just easier to find some vacant land sales and use
that
would be a little bit
value?
more straightforward way to value it, I believe.
No, because when you're valuing something, we say time and time again, it's the first thing you value is legal permissibility. And if excess land is defined as something that you can sell off. You can't do that here. It would need to, I think what the assessment is somewhat suggesting is that there is a lot worth 248 separately rolled next to our subject and that, or separately titled, and that's really what that value is. There would need to be a significant discount for the cost that would be to get it to market and the cost that it would be for them for any sort of variance. Like that's, I understand your point, but I don't think that is an appropriate way of valuing it. So
Okay.
yes.
Okay, that's all my questions. So that will conclude 1546 wall.
Is there any chance for a recess?
I think, pardon me?
A brief?
Yes, I think we will take a 10-minute break. How is that sound? Everybody can stretch their legs. Call the meeting back to order. We will deal with 1561 Aaron Street.
Sorry.
Not take your time.
Trying to make sure I have the right one. I'm not in order. Okay. This is roll number 13011576500, 1361 Aaron Street. The roll year is 2020. We have an assessed value of $699,000. There are two buildings. One story, we have an effective year of 1960 with wall heights of 18 feet. It's zoned M2. The land area is 39,992 square feet. The plan area is 11,004 square feet, giving the land to plan area of 3.63. On page 2, you'll see some sales. I think 2010 was the most recent at 550. They've complied with our request for information. And there's a lease, was a lease at the time, I believe it's currently vacant. They had a net lease at $7.37. There's maps on page 3. And then some photos on page 4 and 5. On page 6, there's the cap rate chart again. The majority of our cap rates fall between 6.34 and 7.80. On page 7, we have our income workup. There's a leasable area of 11,004 square feet. It's broken down into 3 different areas. The overall rent is $5.55. Vacancy loss at 6%, expenses at 2%. Shortfall rate of $3.75, giving a net operating income of $53,787. And we've applied a 7.70 cap rate, giving us our assessed value of $699,000. And now I do actually remember there's no tenant there, that owner was using it for personal storage. On page 8, I have my cap rate, or rent rate comparables. They're all in the same market region. I picked varying sizes just because we have varying sizes of the business premises that they're broken down into. Rents range from $9.88 down to $6.43 a square foot. They're all storage warehouse buildings. And I believe that's it. That concludes my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions?
Just quickly, you indicated there was a $7.37 rent, is that from the mailer?
Yeah.
On your page 60, they're showing net operating income of 17,000, and obviously the property management is a bit high, so that's, there could be some wiggle room there in terms of stabilization, but that's significantly lower than the 737 per square foot, is it not? Because that would be roughly 11,000 square feet, 737, only about 80,000 per annum, and they're reporting 17. Okay. So is there, did you make any, you said it was, you said it was from the mailer, so were there stabilizations or?
Well, there's two separate sheets that they would fill out. On one, they put their per month rent.
Okay.
So if you see on page 18, they put in their monthly rent of $43.82.
And that's what you're suggesting is 737?
That's how when we put this in the model, it takes the square footage plus what they're paying.
Yeah, because I'm getting 649 just by using the monthly rent, and then it also indicates that they pay property taxes, insurance, management, hydro, water, and R&M. Is that not correct? I guess my question is it fair to say that that 737 is likely semi-gross, or even gross?
Yeah, that's quite possible.
Okay, thank you. And then your comparables are range from 4972 to 1700. They are, which is about half the size of the subject, is it not?
Sorry?
Did you bring any that are the same size as the subject? Any comparables? Because I noticed that your leased areas are about half the subject.
Half of the subject.
Area.
Yeah, but again, I was looking not just at the overall square footage, but the different premise areas.
Okay, so these are similar style buildings you were more or less looking for, okay. But is it not reasonable to assume that something with a smaller square footage would then rent for less per square foot than something that is larger due to economies of scale?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Richard, questions?
Just one for clarification. I'm seeing, you're talking about number of buildings as 2, and number of premises is 3. On one of your photos, it looks like a third building off in the corner here.
Yeah.
And I think those are just trailers in the other corner. Is that a third building on the property?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's a storage building.
And is it factored in?
Yep, that is the 2795 at 393.
Sorry, just gotta get that.
So on page 7,
Yeah,
it's the one in the middle.
okay. Okay. So is that what you mean by 3 premises then?
Yes.
Thanks for that. And did you attend the property?
Yes, I did.
You did, and you went inside?
Yes.
What is the overall condition of the property?
It's in good condition. I have some photographs. Like, it's not, I asked the owner what he was doing with it, and he hadn't decided. I mean, it's in good condition. There's like, it could be, I don't know, I think it was a petroleum company before that, but it's clean. It's got overhead, like 2 overhead doors.
Pretty much just an empty structure
Yeah,
then?
he was just using it for his own personal storage until he said he decided what to do. He hadn't decided what to do with it, so.
Okay, thank you. No
Thank
other
you.
questions?
No, I think my question's been answered, thank you.
Did you say the whole property is owner occupied, or just that storage building? Or sorry, is the
It's-
property owner occupied?
It's not, it's owner occupied, but it's not owner occupied for business. He's using it as his own personal storage right now.
Oh, okay,
So he bought the building, I think it was not tenanted when he bought it.
No, there was a tenant.
There was a tenant, okay, but since then, I gather he collects stuff at auctions, and he needs a place to store it, so that's what he's using it for right now, but he
So-
hasn't, sorry?
Okay, so the mailer on page 16, it says rental income, that's maybe from the older tenant or whatever.
That's from the tenant that was there at that time.
Um,
So, they would have been there and they moved out in July of 2018. According to this mailer, their lease ended in July.
Okay. And your comparables? Are any of them more to your liking than, what's the best one? What would you hang your hat on?
I'd say the 1026 Logan
Similar type?
and 822 Aaron Street.
Thank you, that's all my questions. Mr. Neufeld?
Just a quick follow-up, you indicated 1026 and 822, that's comparable to the main building, correct? You would
Yeah.
argue that the shed in the back is less,
Yeah.
obviously less value, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But an overall rent of $555 between all 3 buildings, I think is,
You think is fair, okay.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. I just have pictures to hand out,
Okay.
no information this time.
Thank you.
The subject, as the assessor indicated, was vacated July of 2018. When he purchased it in 2010, the tenant was there. The purchase was based on the tenant. Since the tenant has vacated, he has been leasing it as, this is the same owner as 1561. The assessor brought up that he is not property, that he is leasing it on Kijiji. He isn't using an agent for leasing. He is trying to lease it himself. He has been told, or he has had offers, there's been interest, but every offer, I can't remember if he said it was more than one, but at least the only offer that he did have wanted a substantial amount of work done that he didn't have access to. So realistically, the kind of tenants, when the assessor says that the owner isn't properly, or maybe not how she said it, but the owner isn't marketing it well or sufficiently, you're getting into a different kind of market with these buildings. These buildings don't generally get marketed by people like Colliers. They don't attract that kind of tenant. It's going to attract a tenant that's running a very either niche or small business, and it's not gonna be from someone out of town. It's likely going to be from someone who's just trying to open something up small and easy like this. Or small and cheap, I should say. The owner is using it for storage. If you go through my pictures, it's just, he goes, like the sister said, he goes to auctions and puts stuff in there, and it's just there for the time being. He's got, the next subject you'll see as well is the same story. He just basically has the space that no one's using it, so he's using it for something. But he does want people in there, and it would be wrong to say that he's not trying to get a tenant.
I see.
So for that reason, the 550 I think is a fair value on the entire building. When I compare it to my comparables, honestly, all of these are better. There are the only buildings that are of similar condition are generally multi-tenanted, like which ones were they? Multi-tenanted, like Mountain. Sorry, no, not Mountain. That's another one. These Gomez ones and Higgins at the beginning, and Paramount and Church. Church would be a fair comparison, I think. Actually, that's a multi-tenanted, 5,000 square feet units. This is it's got its own lot, so that would obviously be a bit better. But those Church ones are a good comparison. And of course, the shed in the back, we put 225. It's just basically slab on ground. It's just a shed that's thrown there. It is assessed. We do contend that it is rentable. It is, however, it's not heated, so it would have a smaller rate, a lesser rental rate. The 9% is for the reason for being, the reason for the 9% is, of course, the vacancy. There wasn't vacancy in the reference period, so we didn't apply it. It was right after the reference period, but it has been sitting vacant for over a year now, and there hasn't been a whole lot of interest, and the interest that has been not really feasible. Management, of course, and I do want to point out that 737 that the assessor did provide, again, if you go through her evidence on page 16 and 18, you see that is a semi-gross rent, and that wasn't the true net rent that was being reported or collected. So I think 550 on the main building is somewhat in line with some of the assessor's comparables as well, and then obviously the shed is worth less, and we agree to that, just not on how much less. And then a 9% cap, and that gets us to 472. And we'll answer the question. 2018, there was a recommendation. There was a tenant at the time. We looked at it and said it was, this building probably didn't have much more value to be reduced, but it's vacant now, so our entire opinion of it is different. If it's going to sit vacant for a year, it's clearly not an easy building to fill up, so I think that needs to be taken into consideration this cycle. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, I was with Mr. Neufeld for, I think we went to 3 or 4 of these properties on the same day, and he was talking about, the owner of these properties was talking about leasing certain ones and whatnot. I'm not sure if maybe you misunderstood or got it mixed up with another one. This particular one.
This is the one he was talking about, more or less.
He was talking about having offers from a church from another.
For 1561.
No, that was for Notre Dame.
That was Notre Dame.
Yeah, this one he said
Okay,
he
you're
had.
right. You are.
On
Yes.
this particular one, I asked him if he was planning on leasing it, and he hadn't decided. He said he hadn't so
Okay.
far, and he hadn't decided what he was gonna do with it,
Okay.
so, just to clarify that.
But he did mention that there was someone interested in it, and he needed to do work. That was this building. And because I don't think the church required work, so I'm not mixing up too many things. He said
Okay.
there was some interest in this building.
Yeah, but he hadn't
But he
marked
hadn't
it yet,
decided,
right.
yeah, because I guess his contention right now is whether or not to spend 50 grand on the building to bring it up to market, or 100 grand, and that's what he's unsure of. That's the impression I got from what he was saying. If you feel free to continue,
Okay.
please.
I don't recall that, but, okay.
Okay.
So, 472, that's what you're asking.
For 467, but yeah, Or sorry, oh, sorry, yes, I'm looking at the net rent.
Okay, so there was a sale on this property in 2010.
Yep, that was the sale value was how Rocky appraised it, and that was when there was a tenant at the time. Again, the 550 is not out of left field for what it's worth today. 628 is still too high, I believe, though, so I do think it needs to be below 2018. 550 was with a tenant, so it's not insane to say that when it now doesn't have a tenant, it could be lower, because there really isn't much reason to suggest the area is getting better with some in a building that has no tenant. Buildings that don't have tenants are, of course, don't have tenants, they're difficult, so. 472 is, yeah, I think it lines up with our rents and our cap, makes sense.
472 is that's less than land value.
Less than land?
Yeah.
Do you have lands, Kyle? I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, you could be right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not even land value.
Yeah.
So
I
Questions, all the questions?
sorry. I would argue that potentially, just to answer that, land value could potentially be appropriate for this site as it would, redevelopment wouldn't be insane.
did you think that building was in poor shape, poor condition?
Not terrible, no, but there is, yeah, I don't know, I don't think land value is necessarily out of left field for it. It's not well finished, it's not ready to market, it's not even ready to get a tenant in there.
For an industrial building, you wouldn't agree that it's in average condition for an industrial building of its age?
In the area, sure, but then you're not gonna get the tenants that you're suggesting, and because the tenants that you're suggesting would be fully finished industrial areas, correct? You're not getting it in this state at that rate.
What kind of, I
Like
wasn't aware that I was suggesting
sorry, your comparables would likely be finished industrial sites, correct? This is, in this state, that's not the same as the comparables, is what I'm saying. It's not a bulldoze part of that, that's not what I'm saying, it's just, its highest and best use might be so close in the income and land sales that you could potentially do a land analysis. And the rental market in the area isn't super strong, so I think that's says that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
I do. So I'm looking at these photos
Great.
provided of the interior, and are you suggesting then all of this stuff we see in the building, not the walls and whatnot, but the equipment, the racking, the stuff on the racking, that is all his personal stuff?
Yeah, I mean, he owns 6 or 7 buildings, so he goes to auctions, and it's basically, he's currently using it to service his other buildings, so there'd be stuff from his other buildings that are going into this building.
And so, could one conclude that if you were gonna rent this building out, you would likely take all that stuff?
Oh, of course, yes, yeah, you would, yeah, of course.
So the building would take on a drastically different appearance
Of
if
course.
all this stuff was not in there.
Sure, yeah, no, of course, its use is potentially not what its use is not up to its potential, because it's being used as a storage.
Apparently.
Yes, yeah.
Looking at the concrete floor, is that concrete floor in good shape?
I think it was fair shape, yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't notice any problems.
okay, and,
And he's parking cars in there too, so I imagine there's not wrecking it.
yeah. And I take it these are washrooms at the back and the bottom. Yeah, okay.
Last page? Yes, I believe so, yeah, no, that's, there was 2 units at one point, I believe, in this building, and I wanna say that this would have been common area, but I could be wrong there.
Well, going back to the other page, it looks like there is an exit to another space.
Yeah, correct, that might be that might be the storefront warehouse
Okay.
portion, I can't recall.
Okay, gives me a good idea, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good, thanks.
I have a question of the assessor. Ms. Neufeld gave evidence that the shed, the building at the back is unheated. Is that the rates you've used there of $316, is that for the unheated building? Is that,
I don't know if we have it as unheated or not, to be honest.
I did make an assumption, just to clarify.
okay,
Whether or not it's heated, I'm not certain.
okay. And you're saying you're not sure whether it's unheated?
We didn't go in it when we went, I would imagine it's unheated, I was making an assumption.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you. Did you want to,
I think Mr. Newfeld said this last one might be quick.
Greg?
okay,
Yeah, let's wait, let's finish this.
okay.
Sorry, I have to do mine online here.
That concludes 1561 Aaron, and we will move on to 1037 Aaron Street.
Oh, I might not be able to do this.
Yes? There you go.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry.
I just have to renew this, it's fine, it'll take me
Okay.
2 seconds.
Let's see, this is rule number 130-113-61-000, 1037 Aaron Street. This is for roll year 2020. We have an assessed value of $454,000. And I have a recommendation for this property. There was a sale in 2018. It appears to be an arm's length sale for $250,000. I went to inspect because I wondered why it was so low, at arm's length. And when I went to inspect the property, I did find why, I now know why it was so low. If you can go to page 4 of my brief, there's some photographs, some overhead photos. And you'll see in the first picture, at the top of page 4, there's a brick building in front. That's a 2-story brick building. There's offices in there. And the back portion, beyond that, which is pretty much 60+% of the building, is actually, when I walked in there, you could see right away the ceiling was sloping, the floor was sloping, it's actually falling into the ground. So they have to have a lot of work done to it, it's not leasable space. I guess the studs underneath the floor are sinking into the dirt, into the ground. And so I don't think it's worth more than the sale price, so I'd like to recommend lowering it to the sale price of $250,000.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld,
We're in agreement, yes, so just questions, would that reflect in the rent, or are you just looking at sale, like land value? Like, how would that change its,
do you have a workup for us?
I do have a workup for it, actually. I don't know if I have time.
So you put no value on the back portion of the building at all?
There is actually a value on it of $459. It is used.
Well, that's the 459,
Yeah,
okay.
the owner, again, is using it for storage. It's full of his stuff. There's one tenant on the second floor, and the main main floor office is vacant.
Oh, and you've got a high vacancy.
Tenant on the second floor of the front part.
Yes. Yes, I also
Yes.
applied 50%
50%
vacancy.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld, you're.
That's fine, I'm very happy with that, thank you.
Okay, we will, that will conclude 1037 Aaron Street. That concludes your part of the hearing. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes the assessor's part.